So in this video, I will be reading the entire Walking Dead graphic novel series from beginning to end. Holy motherfucking shit balls. I was honestly so shocked. I was mortified. It's just non-stop anxiety at this point. That was, oh, it killed me. I wasn't expecting that. I'm scared. I knew it was bloody coming and it still got me. Oh my god, the ending of this floored me. Oh, I had chills. Like, even if I didn't know what was coming, I had chills. Oh my god, I just flicked to a page and I'm so upset. For every single volume that goes by, I get more and more scared. I'm emotional, I'm upset, I need to think on this. I've just finished. Fucking hell. If you hear a lot of whistling, it's because it's raining and it's windy. It isn't zombies. It isn't zombies, I promise. Or is it? Hi, welcome back to How to Train Your Gavin. I'm going to be doing a Walking Dead video. Well, it's not just going to be today, it's going to be over the next 2 weeks, I imagine. And this has been such a long time coming. Such a long time coming. I have been such a big Walking Dead fan. Well, I haven't been for a while, but I used to be. When the show first started airing in 2010, I used to be obsessed. Absolutely obsessed. I think from seasons 1 through 5, that was my peak Walking Dead era, and I ate it up. I bought everything. I even read the first few Walking Dead Governor books. I collected the Blu-rays. I got the graphic novels, which I will get to in a second. I even had sex with a guy dressed as Rick Grimes, and it was the third best sex of my life. So I was a hardcore fan back in the day. Now, I was very sad, but quite relieved that the AMC Walking Dead TV show, the original one, was going to end next month. And for some reason, I thought this show would probably last forever. I thought it would be like the next Simpsons or something. Just the way that AMC bled that show dry, it's kind of sad to see it be a shell of its former self. But yeah, I stopped watching this show, end of season 6, start of season 7, for obvious reasons. I think if you are watching this, you're probably a big Walking Dead fan, you probably know what happens at the end of season 6, start of season 7. And I do want to get back into the show, but I have read a few spoilers after that as well, so there'll be no element of surprise if I go back into it. But I do want to eventually catch up with the show. And it's always been a dream of mine to read the original source material. So in this video, I will be reading the entire Walking Dead graphic novel series from beginning to end. I'm not going to hold these up for much longer because these are probably the heaviest books I own. Be great to do some exercises with, though, instead of going to the gym. Yeah. Also, my cats are currently snuggling on the bed right now. It's so hard not to be distracted. Oh my god, I want to join them so bad. So The Walking Dead follows Rick Grimes, and he, at the very start of the series, ends up getting injured and put into a coma. Once he awakes from this coma, he wakes up to a post-apocalyptic world where zombies have pretty much taken over and civilization has crumbled. Rick Grimes sets out to find his family, and this is his journey. And oh my god, like, just saying that out loud makes me want to rewatch the show from the beginning again. When I tell you, I just fell in love with The Walking Dead from the very first episode, the pilot episode. Frank Darabont was an incredible showrunner. Season 1 was perfection. And I want to recapture that feeling again. I want to get that love for The Walking Dead back. I want it back. I want it back now. So hopefully by reading the graphic novels, I will get that feeling back. So in this video, I will be reading all 4 compendiums. I believe there are 32 volumes in total, which doesn't sound too bad, but I do think there are over 4,000 pages to read, and I think that's quite a lot. Even though it is a graphic novel series, it is still rather dense, and that's a lot to get through. I want to try and read maybe 4 volumes a day. I think that's digestible. I think that is a pretty good goal to set myself. Whether or not that happens, you will have to watch to find out. But I'm so excited to dive back into this world and see it from different eyes. I don't know everything because I do know a lot of things changed from the graphic novel series to the television show. So while I do think I know of some upcoming major deaths, I don't know everything, and I don't know what's the same, what's different, and I don't even know how this series ends either, and I've been avoiding spoilers so badly for the graphic novel series. For the TV show, I didn't really care at one point. I just looked up what characters had died since season 7, and yeah, and I've never looked up spoilers before for anything in my life. But with the graphic novel series, I knew I would want to read it from beginning to end at some point, and now is the time. Now is the time. We are celebrating the end of the TV show. It will be bittersweet, but we need to let it rest. We need to let it die. So this vlog will be filled with spoilers, so if you don't want to be spoiled for well, the graphic novel series and the TV show of what I know, because I do think I'm going to end up comparing from memory. Like, if I remember anything that happened in the TV show that happened differently in here, I might flag it up and talk about it. But my memory is kind of shocking. I really do need a rewatch of the first few seasons and then watch the rest of the show for the first time. So just bear that in mind going forward. If you're a huge Walking Dead fan, then I already apologise if I get things mixed up and wrong and I don't know everything, so I won't be able to talk about everything. But I will be mainly reviewing the graphic novel series. So I will be starting with Volume 1, Days Gone By, which also is the very first episode name, I believe. I believe that's the name of the pilot episode. So I'm excited to dive in. I hope you are along for the ride. But before we continue, make sure that you leave this video a like if you enjoy it and subscribe if you haven't already. Okay, now let's get bitten. That actually doesn't sound that great in hindsight. Let's get zombified. Yeah, that sounds better. Wow, I was not expecting just how quickly things would move in the very first volume. How do we fly through pretty much season 1 of The Walking Dead in this one volume? It's, I don't know how many pages it is. It's that. All of this is pretty much what happened in season 1. So, I mean, kudos to the writers of season 1 for stretching that story out and making it 6 episodes. I think it actually did a really good job at, you know, embodying the characters, bringing them to life, and making the story seem not as breakneck and to develop them a bit more. It's something that I really wish the rest of the show had done. Instead of having 16 episode long seasons, really having a really short, like maybe 6 to 10 episodes would have been perfect for the rest of the show. I just feel like it wouldn't have dragged out as much. But I will say that it was probably a little too fast for my liking, the first volume of this. I really appreciate the fact though that we went straight into the story, so we do still start off with, well actually on one page, the very first page, it's Rick and Shane and they are cops, and this is before the zombie apocalypse has happened, and they are dealing with somebody and Rick gets shot. And then in the next page, the next panel, Rick wakes up from a coma. He's been in a coma for a month and he is going through this hospital and there are dead people around. They are zombies, and he comes across them. He's no idea what to do and what's happening, so like he runs out. He comes across the zombie on the floor, on the ground, which is another iconic moment from the show as well. But in this, it really does affect Rick, and I love the fact that he comes back and shoots the zombie. I love that that happened in here too. So yeah, he ends up going back to his house where he lived with Laurie and Carl. Laurie is his wife, Carl is his son, who's 7 years old, and the house is empty. His family isn't there. And when he goes outside, he gets hit over the head with a shovel by Dwayne. And Dwayne is the son of Morgan. And Morgan and Dwayne still live in the neighborhood. They keep themselves like locked in, away from the zombies, and keeps themselves safe. And explains to Rick that, well, everything went to shit. The zombie apocalypse happened and it's been about a month, and the government told people to go to big cities in order to be protected and safe. And so Rick thinks, oh, maybe Laurie took Carl to Atlanta. I love the premise of it. Honestly, like, I genuinely love the way that The Walking Dead starts. And just like waking up, like, what would you do? What would you do if you woke up in a hospital after, you know, a month in a coma, although you wouldn't know you were in a coma for that long, unless you ran into someone, of course. You see these dead people walking around, like, would you believe it? Like, would you think this is actually reality right now? It's hard to wrap your mind around it. But yeah, it's something that makes me think, like, huh, if I was in this position, what would I do? And it's terrifying, honestly. I think I would be absolutely terrified. I don't think I would last more than a day. I genuinely don't think I'd last more than a day. But I love the isolated feeling that Rick had. I loved the disorientation and the confusion, and it really does come across in the panels as well. Like, I'm not in love with the art style, but it's very serviceable. I can see expression. I do think the characters' faces are done pretty well, to the point where you can believe that what they're saying and what they're feeling comes across genuinely in their faces. So not really my cup of tea in terms of art style, but still really well done. So yeah, Rick ends up leaving Morgan and Dwayne and goes on the road. He comes across a house, and inside this house there are people who have, well, it looks like they've been shot in the head, and then the patriarch of the family shot himself in the head. I remember, again, that moment from the TV show. I mean, it's not exactly a big family like it was in this, but again, it's that feeling, that sense of, well, shit, like, everything has gone to hell, and who's safe? Who is actually safe? And how heartbreaking it is that these families are, well, wiped out now. I'm gonna sneeze. Bless me. Rick comes across a horse and, oh, the poor horse. The poor horse. I remember this goddamn horse from the first episode of The Walking Dead as well. I was just like, oh. But then we took out to Atlanta. Things happen so quickly again. He gets surrounded by a lot of zombies. But this is when it really kind of divulges from the TV show. So in the TV show, Rick ends up going inside a tank and he has a voice and it's Glenn's voice, and Glenn helps him get out of the situation, and he ends up taking him to this store where other survivors are, and the survivors are trying to get back to their camp. And there are a few episodes, I think maybe episode 2 and 3, where they're at the store and they're trying to escape. Although I might be remembering that wrong, I don't know. Anyway, in this one, he just runs into Glenn and Glenn takes him away from it and takes him straight to the camp where his family are. And it feels so unbelievable, honestly. Like, it felt unbelievable anyway in the TV show, but it feels even more unbelievable in here because I don't even think it's been 50 pages at this point from the very start of the graphic novel to this moment. I mean, it's a nice moment and stuff, but I don't think I felt that overjoy, or I didn't feel like emotionally invested just yet. This is really killing my hand. Emotionally invested in Rick and his family just yet. I feel like because we were going like so fast with him as a character and, you know, just going through this situation and everything's like so big and there's just so much to take in, it's hard to really feel that relief in the happiness for Rick for finding his family. I mean, obviously, in a human sense, I do feel relief that he found his wife and son. But I guess emotional attachment so far I'm lacking because it just feels like boom, 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 boom. And we're flying through, absolutely flying through what should probably take more volumes to, I don't know, flourish or, you know, more struggle to get where he is. So yeah, I wasn't excited taken by the fact that it happened so quickly. And this is when like I really think, wow, like I didn't realize just how different it is to the TV show, you know, and I genuinely thought I knew when things happened, but obviously not, because I was more shocked by even more things that happened in volume 1, like the first volume. So after that, you know, he's integrated into the camp with his wife and son. We meet the other characters. We have Jim, Andrea, Amy, you know, there is Shane, Rick's best friend, who, oh my god, like again, I cannot believe all of this happened in volume 1. Something happens at the end of volume 1. I was just like, what the fuck? I can't believe this happened then. Yeah, we also meet Donna. I really don't like her. She gets right on my nerves. Like, she is very judgmental and just so rude and just makes me roll my eyes. I really don't like Donna. And I have no idea Donna's fate. I don't believe she was portrayed in the TV show. I don't think she was a character. I don't know if maybe they changed her, merged her into other characters, like maybe Carol, because we do have Carol and Sophia in here as well, but they haven't really done much so far. I think Carol's only really spoken once about how she lost her husband, but I also remember in the TV show Carol's husband was still alive, but he was very abusive, and there was like a little bit of hint of that, but he's not alive in the comic book. So yeah, there's that. There are other characters as well. Dale is still in it as well. He has his RV. There are other characters. I'm sure I'll mention them further down the line when they become more important to the story. So there is some tension between you know what's funny as well about Dale is that the first thing he says to Rick is really just gossiping. Like, I didn't realize Dale was such a shitster. I can't remember if he did this in the TV show, but literally the first time he has a conversation with Rick, he's like, watch Shane around your wife. Don't trust him with your wife. I'm like, oof, the little bitch. If this was a reality TV show, Dale would be that bitchy character who says a lot of shit and steps back and watches things implode. He is that character. And it's funny because he's an old man, you know? So it's hilarious. I love that. So yeah, there's tension between Laurie and even Rick as well, because Rick wants to give Carl a gun even though he's only 7 years old. And like, yeah, I mean, it's a zombie apocalypse. He needs to protect himself. And it turns out to come in handy by the end of this first volume. I thought it would take longer. I generally thought there would be more development there. And like Carl having a gun, I thought that would be explored a bit more. But yeah, it seems like we have this, you know, quarrel between Laurie and Rick about his safety and having a gun, and that the fact he's 7, it's like immoral for him to have a gun at that age. But yeah, Rick wants him to protect himself and make sure that if a zombie comes, he's able to make sure he doesn't get bit and protect his family as well. So I do fall on the Rick camp on that argument, but at the same time I do understand Laurie's side of it, you know, and it's hard though. It's hard. Like, I don't think you could really understand how to react in that situation or how to do some things in the way they do it without being in that situation. So it's like my niece and nephews, they're very, very young. If we were in a zombie apocalypse, would I trust them with a gun? Probably not. But would they need one? Absolutely. You know, it's so hard. It's so hard. It's a good conversation to have. But yeah, there is tension between Shane and Rick. It looks like Shane feels like he's like lost something when Rick's come back, which is strange, but obviously I do know certain things have happened between him and Laurie. What's really interesting is that we get, you know, the second episode Guts, when they cover themselves, well, Rick and Glenn cover themselves in zombie guts and blood to go past these zombies and make sure that they don't get caught. And then it starts raining and it starts washing it off, and then there's like this really intense chase. Love it. I absolutely love the TV show. It's done pretty well in this as well. Not as intense, and it's Rick who comes up with the idea. Wasn't it? I think it was Glenn in the TV show. I think it was his idea on the TV show to wear these guts and stuff to blend in with the zombies. When this one, they have gone to a gun shop to get some guns for the camp. So, like, there's a lot writing on it. And yeah, it starts raining as they're on the way back. And then it leads into, like, a little bit later on, after they've been, like, practicing guns and stuff with everyone in the camp. A bit later on, again, I'm sure this happened in maybe episode 4, episode 5 of the TV show, when the camp gets attacked and Amy gets bitten. And Jim also gets bitten as well. And that all happens in volume 1. I was like, wow, like, this is, I mean, a fantastically action-packed and exciting first volume, for sure. I'm not caring about any of the characters the way I think I should care about the characters. So when something like that happens, when, say, Amy gets bitten, I'm like, okay, she was going to college, or I think it was uni, college or uni. Yeah, she's too young. She's very young. She's got her whole life ahead of her. And I sympathise with that. But I haven't grown to love her or, you know, have any kind of feeling towards her just yet. And then she gets bitten and she dies. So it's very breakneck, and I'm loving and hating it at the same time, because I want to connect. I want to attach myself to the story in this and remove myself from thinking about the TV show, because I need to get my head out of that. I need to stop thinking about that and treat this as its own entity, because this came first, you know, this is the original. So what I'm trying to do moving forward is just taking it at face value, and my gut instinct on the comic book so far is that everything's just happening too fast. I can't connect with any of the characters just yet. So I'm hoping we might calm down a little bit now and get more of a reflection on the characters and learn who they are as people and connect with them. That's what I want. That's what I want from this moving forward. I'm not saying that volume 1's bad by any means. It's actually not. It's like a really great start to it, I think. And we're not even over yet either. Yeah, they end up moving from this camp. There was tension between Shane and Rick because Rick wanted them to move away from the camp anyway, because it was close to Atlanta, where there are loads of zombies anyway. So it's like, why are we so close to all of these zombies? We should move. And you know what? I totally say it from Rick's perspective, but I do. This is what I really like about this series, like, so far, is that you can get on both sides of the argument and say, oh, that's actually like a good argument to have, because Shane's argument of staying at this camp is that, you know, the government said this will be a safe place. Obviously it wasn't, because it's overrun by zombies, but when there's a cleanup going to happen, or when people are going to get rescued, they're obviously going to go to the more main places, the bigger places, the big cities, and that's where help's going to come. And if they stray too far from it and they get lost or whatever, then they're never going to be found by the government. So obviously they still have hope and faith that they're going to be rescued. And, you know, in a zombie apocalypse, I'm sure you have to have some kind of hope that, you know, things will turn out all right in the end. Otherwise, what's the point? What's the point in surviving if there's just no hope whatsoever? So I see the argument on both sides, and I think Robert Kirkman, I think he's the main writer. I don't know about Charlie Adler, Tony Moore, and Cliff Rathbone. I don't know if they're the illustrators or if they also help write, but I think they've done such a good job at showing both sides of the argument in different matters, which seem a little bit mundane. Like, say, even when, like, Laurie and Donna and them are, you know, doing the laundry and stuff, and the conversation between doing the laundry and going out and hunting and stuff like that, you say from both perspectives. After the attack on the camp, and Jim's been bitten, Amy's dead, Jim's been bitten, they leave Jim, and they just leave him. I can't remember how it happened in the TV show. I do need a good rewatch. Yeah, they just leave him, and so he's gone as well. So it does feel like characters, I mean, even though they didn't feel like main characters in the slightest, it does feel like nobody's really safe, and I like that feeling a lot, especially after what happens at the very end, because Shane and Rick go off, and they're arguing, and then out of nowhere, Carl shoots Shane in the neck. And it looks like Shane's dead, and I think he's dead. And what Carl says as well, because I genuinely thought that what would happen would be that Carl would just randomly get shot by somebody from the Green family, like what happens in the season 2 premiere. But that's not the case at all. This is more like the end of season 2 when Shane gets shot and killed. And it's intense that this is volume 1, and Shane, who I think is such a... I mean, he's made a name for himself. You know, John Bernthal has just created this character through his portrayal that when I think of The Walking Dead, I do think about Rick and Shane. Like, I mainly think about them first and foremost in, like, their journey at the very start of the series. So to have Shane die at the end of Volume 1 at Carl's hand is huge. And when Carl says, it's not the same as killing the dead ones, Daddy, and then ending with Rick saying, it never should be, son, it never should be, I'm just like, holy hell, this is like pretty fucked up though. It's a great ending of the first volume though, because I mean, I want to read on, I'm gonna read on, I always wanted to read on, but it's just like, wow, that's huge. That's a huge, huge thing. And I'm so surprised. And I'm glad I'm surprised, because I was worried that because I knew so much about the TV show and little spoilers here and there, that I wouldn't enjoy as much or be surprised by it as much, but I don't think it's had a factor in it at all. I'm shocked. I'm so shocked. And I enjoyed it a lot. I do have my nitpicky things with, you know, the speed of it and characters, but I think overall, I think it was so solid. And I'm probably going to give each volume a rating out of 10. And I would probably give the very first volume an 8. I think it started off like so brilliantly. I wish it would sort out, but at the same time, I thought the action was just so engrossing. And I thought it was such a great start. And yeah, it just, I enjoyed myself. I had so much fun reading it. And that's the main thing for me. It could be the shittest volume, but as long as I enjoy myself reading it, then I enjoyed it, you know? So, yeah, really good start. Excited to see where we're going next. Chapter 2 is called Miles Behind Us, and I believe that was originally the Season 2 premiere title, but I think they changed it, and different things happened. I do know there was like a whole, you know, controversy or whatever between like showrunners and, you know, the actual direction that Frank Darabont wanted the show to go in versus what actually happened. So it's going to be really interesting to see now just how much we divulge, especially since I think Volume 1 pretty much covered Season 1 and like that tiny little bit of Season 2 when Shane gets killed. But yeah, it's already like this is one volume down. We have 31 more to go, and I'm already like shocked at a lot of things. So yeah, it was great. It was really great. I really need to get used to the breakneck speed of this series. I can't believe that we flew through Season 2 of The Walking Dead in one volume. And it wasn't even all of the volume either. The fact that we went to so many different places in one volume, I'm actually scared of future volumes where we stay in one place for a long period of time because, okay, for context, I love The Walking Dead TV show, of course. And sometimes it was very hard for the pacing because sometimes they would just like flip from one place to the next and stuff. They would spend enough time in one place. Sometimes it would get drawn out too long. And then it was a really hard balance. It was something that I kind of took in from the TV show and realised, do I like it when they stay in one place for too long? Do I like it when they move around? It's like really hard to kind of know my exact thoughts and feelings on the kind of way that the show looked at location and how long the survivors stayed there. So with this, we really did fly through a lot of stuff. So yeah, Shane's dead now, and they leave the camp and they go to this place called Wiltshire Estates, and I think we might have gone there during the TV show at some point. I don't think it was during was it during Season 2? I'm trying to remember now, like my mind is foggy, but I definitely recall them coming to an estate. Yeah, I really need to rewatch the show. Anyway, they come to this estate, it's walled in, and it looks safe. It looks pretty safe, so they decide to stay the night there. And what I love about this kind of volume is that the tension was ripe. The tension was ripe, it was beautiful. So on the outside, there is a sign, but because it's snowing, you can't really see the sign, right? So as they are in the Wiltshire Estates, it's snowing and the snow starts to kind of settle and it looks like it's starting to melt as well. So as they're inside this estate, the sign, well, the snow that's on the sign is starting to melt. It says, "All dead, do not enter." And I love the way that kind of happened. It's like, I could hear tension music in my head as that part was happening. And I was like, oh, okay, like this is kind of scary because they're inside, they're asleep, and sleeping, kind of sleeping. Things happen between characters that was like, okay. But yeah, everyone's inside and it's dangerous. So during the night, well, Andrea and Dale are having sex? Really? Like, Dale's a much older man than Andrea, right? Like, Andrea's not that old if she was sister to Amy. But yeah, if that had happened in the show, I would have felt so icky. I'm glad it didn't. But that was weird. And one thing that I'm finding as well is that there's a lot of romance kind of happening right now. And I don't know how I feel about it. So backing up just a little bit, yeah, they come to this estate place. Oh, actually, a little before that, they meet Tyrese. And Tyrese is a character we meet in season 3 of the TV show. So I was like, oh wow, we're meeting Tyrese so early. And he has a daughter called, I think her name was Julie, and her boyfriend Chris. And they are like on their own, and yeah, they kind of incorporate themselves into the group. And Carol and Tyrese seem to have a little bit of a thing going on. So yeah, we have people like falling in love quite fast because after that, Carl ends up getting shot by Otis, who is part of the Green family, and the Green family was a huge part of season 2 of The Walking Dead. And that whole scene happened. That's what I thought was going to happen at the end of Volume 1. Because, yeah, Shane was still alive during season 2 of the show. So when Shane got shot in the neck, I thought it was going to be Carl getting shot by the stranger and taken to the farm to get healed. But no, that didn't happen. But it did happen in this one. And it's like, again, it's like quite jarring trying to get my mind out of what I've seen and what I'm reading now. So they end up going to the Green farm and Carl gets patched up. Herschel looks after him. We meet Herschel and his daughter Maggie. He also has another daughter. I can't keep any of their names in my head. I should have taken a photo. Oh, hang on. Oh my god, like I'm literally going from everywhere all at once. Honestly, this review is going to be all over. This whole vlog is going to be a mess. I apologise. We're going back to Wiltshire Estates for just a second. So you know how I mentioned Donna in the previous volume review and how much I didn't really like her? She started to be a bit more nicer in this one, and you know, it seemed that she was going to be like happy and stuff. She's like, oh, everything's going to be happy and fine. And then because they're in Wiltshire Estates and everyone's dead inside, they soon find out the very next morning, and Donna gets killed. And I was like, oh, okay, so like she does get killed quite quickly, quite fast, and I thought maybe we would see more of her, but no, she's gone. She's a goner. It means that her husband, Alan, has the twins, like they have twin boys, so the grief of that is going to be quite hard, and it looks quite hard for him. He seems to be struggling quite a lot, but I do not recall any of this in the TV show. I do know there was 2 girls in season 4 of The Walking Dead who were sisters, and that whole storyline, just look at the flowers. I don't know if that was inspired by the twins in this. I have no idea. But yeah, I have no idea what's going to happen with Alan and the boys, especially since Andrew tries to confront Alan and be like, look, you need to think about the boys. You know, you've just lost your wife, yes, but the boys need you. And he's just he just seems so inconsolable, and it's a little bit scary of like what he might end up doing. And actually what else is scary as well, okay, like this is going to be all over the place, is Tyrese's daughter and the boyfriend. They seem to be planning something, and I'm not 100% sure what it is, because they have a couple of guns, and they say something very ominous about it, like something being the right time or doing something together, and it just seems so weird and bizarre. And for some reason, I think it's going to involve murder, or I don't know, maybe suicide. I don't know. That just seemed very suspicious. And anyway, where even was I? Yes, we got to the farm. The farm was, again, a great setting, but we get, again, blast through the stuff that I knew from the TV show, like say the zombies in the barn. One of the most heartbreaking things for me in the TV show is when Sophia comes out of the barn as a zombie after they lost her in the season 2 premiere. Like that moment shocked me. I remember the first time I ever saw that, how shocked I was. And obviously that doesn't happen because Sophia's still alive. She didn't ever get separated from Carol. So yeah, that whole thing was really just the Green family that were in the barn and, you know, a few of the other neighbours. So Herschel ends up losing a couple of his children. We don't have Beth. We do have Maggie, but there were like a couple of other kids that Herschel had who ended up dying during this whole barn scene where they tried to get a zombie inside, but it's overwhelmed and Herschel ends up losing a couple of his kids. And Rick always said as well, Rick told him, you shouldn't keep the dead people in the barn because, you know, they're dead and they're going to eat you. But Herschel doesn't listen and unfortunately loses 2 of his kids because of it. And his other child, Maggie, her and Glenn, it was instant. Literally, Maggie sits down and she's like, wanna fuck? And Glenn's like, okay. You know, that's pretty much like how they are introduced. And it's so bizarre. But also, like, I kind of liked it a little bit. What I didn't like, though, was just how quickly they became a thing. Because by the end of the volume, and before the others move on from the farm, Glenn is like, I love her, and Maggie says, I love him. And Glenn ends up staying at this farm instead of going with the survivors on because Herschel's kicked them out. So all of that is, like, so bizarre. Just like, yeah, like, I don't get it. Like, I kind of get it because Glenn's like, oh, you know, I don't want to be alone, and I would go out and not care about myself because he didn't really care whether he lived or died, and he just needed someone, and he doesn't think that he'll ever find someone like Maggie. And I totally get that, and I guess with it being a post-apocalyptic world, you know, emotions are heightened, emotions are a lot higher, but it's still like so bizarre. I would have loved to have seen a bit more development, and again, I still don't think that I'm connecting too much with the characters as much as I want to, especially since we also get the revelation that Laurie's pregnant, and Dale, being the shit stirrer he is like, Laurie, like, this could be Shane's, like, what the fuck? And it's just, I kind of respect the hustle, but at the same time, I'm a bit like, Dale, really? Do you have to get involved in everything? But yeah, he makes the point that, you know, Rick's only been with him about a month, and Laurie thinks she might be pregnant in about 2 weeks. But I think we all kind of know, or kind of think, that the baby belongs to Shane. Like, it's Shane's kid. But there is that kind of ambiguity up in the air, because I don't 100% know if that's genuinely the case. So yeah, I know I'm all over the place with my review. My mind's all over the place. Yeah, so they move on from Herschel's because he kicks them out. At the end of the volume, they come across the prison, which was the big place for season 3 through the first half of season 4. And I love the prison in the TV show. I thought it was a fantastic setting. So it'll be really interesting to see how they cope here. I do think the prison storyline lasts a whole lot longer in the graphic novels than what we've just got with like the farm and the estate and the camp at the start. You know, like everything's been moving so fast. I think now we're probably going to like slow down a little bit going into volume 3 and really taking advantage of this prison setting. I'm interested to see like how they take it and if it's similar or different to the TV show and what happens next, because a lot of like huge storylines happening while at the prison that I kind of know about, but when it comes to like smaller characters and stuff, I'm not too sure on fates and what happens with them. But there are a lot of interesting storylines and threads being planted in here that I think will have lasting consequences, or we're going to see some kind of big developments at this prison. So I'm excited. But I'm keeping open-minded. I'm hoping that I connect with the characters a bit more moving forward. And I think now we're going to be settling down a little bit. So yeah, I'm probably going to give volume 2 a 6 out of 10. Yeah, I think a 6 out of 10. I would love to have spent more time at the farm. And even at the estate as well. I think there was so much potential for the estate to be a whole volume, for the farm to be a whole volume or 2, and not have moved so fast from them. But I will say, this is keeping my interest so high, and I'm really appreciating the fact that this is just so entertaining. Like, there's just so much entertainment happening, and I'm sure I could have touched on so much more in this review and things that happened in volume 2. But yeah, there's just like so much to remember and so much to read that it's kind of a bit hard to keep things out. And I don't write notes down. I really don't. I just read it and then I sit down in front of the camera and talk. So that's kind of my review process. Hope it's okay. And yeah, I'm excited to move on to volume 3 now. Holy fucking shit. Volume 3. Wow. Okay. So a lot happened and a lot that I had no idea about. I genuinely had no idea about. Oh my god. So in volume 3 we've gone to the prison and we have Tyrese, Rick and Andrea kind of clear out the outside perimeter of the prison. Like they go like into the gates of the prison and, you know, in like all the grounds and stuff, they get rid of the zombies there, and there's just so many of them. Like they're quite overwhelmed and they end up, you know, getting rid of them and stuff because they're so good. And then they decide that the next day they'll go inside the prison and check it out then. What I like about this volume already is just like how we've kind of dialed it back a bit to begin with. We dialed it back a bit to explore the characters a little bit more, and we have little character moments. Like we have Laurie waking everyone up to go be sick outside. You know, she is still pregnant and it's something that they've kind of gotten used to. We still have Alan grieving the loss of his wife Donna. We have Andrea and Dale. We even have Carl and Sophia. Oh my god, like, they're the cutest, honestly. Like, they... Sophia is just in love with Carl. There was a moment in this where Sophia and Carl are playing Go Fish, and Sophia's like, do you have a bearded guy with a black upside down heart? and do you want to be my boyfriend? And he's like, no way, gross, you're disgusting, go fish. It's just so funny, but so adorable. And then they do end up, like, by the end of the volume, Carl's like, yeah, okay, I'll be your boyfriend. We can hold hands and stuff. And it's just like, it's so adorable. It's so cute. There's just so much possibility at this prison as well for a new life. Laurie mentions it, Carol mentions it, and it's like definitely a hopeful start to a new beginning for these survivors. And I kind of worry as well that every time they mention, oh, it's going to be so good here, we're so hopeful, I'm like, look, you've jinxed it. Shit's gonna hit the fan now. So it's the next day. Rick and Tyrese and Andrea, they go inside the prison and they come across a cafeteria where there are 4 survivors, 4 inmates who have survived the apocalypse. And they seem pretty decent at first. They seem pretty nice. And the survivors come in, they've got plenty of meatloaf, plenty of food and stuff. So it looks so ideal. And one of them says that they are in there for murder. And that's like, ooh, scary, right? Especially since a little bit later on, Rick goes to the green farm and tries to get Herschel and Maggie and Glenn to come to the prison because they have this huge facility where they'll be safe. And so Herschel doesn't actually put up a fight. He's like, yeah, okay, let's go. And it's kind of like, for me, it was a little bit like, oh, that was easy. And they do end up going. And Otis stays behind at the farm to look after the livestock and things. So when that all happens and stuff, they're integrating with the inmates. Something like that definitely took me by surprise, but I kind of had an inkling of it in a previous volume, was when Julie and, what's his name, Christopher, I think. I'm getting names mixed up left, right, and centre here. But Tyrese's daughter, in the previous volume, they were talking about, you know, being prepared for something. They had a couple of guns, and I kind of thought, oh, maybe they're going to, like, commit suicide together. Well, yeah, that's exactly what is going to happen. So they hear a shot, and they come running, and Tyrese is holding his daughter. She's dead. And we have Chris, he's still alive. He pulled the trigger too quickly so that she couldn't pull the trigger for him, so he's still alive. And Tyrese beats him. But Julie comes back to life. She's been shot and killed, but she comes back to life. She wasn't bitten. And so, like, this zombie virus is like, this is like their way of finding out that it doesn't matter if they're bitten or not. If they die, they will come back reanimated as a zombie. And I like the way it was revealed in this more than in the TV show. I remember the end of season 1, they got to the CDC or something like that, and I didn't really love that episode. I didn't love the way it was revealed and things. I thought it was a little bit, I don't know. So it was such a huge, impactful moment and quite a scary moment for them as well, especially since, and I love this as well, the fact that Rick ends up going and he says, I'm going to be away for like a day, I'm going to be back tomorrow morning, and he doesn't tell anybody what he's doing. So it turns out he goes back to the very first camp where Shane got killed, and he digs him up, and he is a zombie, and he kills him, he shoots him. And I found that such an impactful moment for Rick because he's definitely starting to disintegrate. You can see his mind and his well-being really crumbling in under the pressures of looking after this group, you know, being the leader, as well as seeing so many people die around him. And, you know, the information that, yeah, if you die, you'll come back as a zombie, bitten or not. So that was a huge moment. But while Rick's gone, and again, this is where I was like shocked again. While Rick's gone, well, one, Carol ends up kissing Laurie because she thinks she's lost Tyrese, because Tyrese goes like pretty suicidal in this horde of zombies, and he just goes in head first, and the other group have to like leave him, and they assume he's dead. Turns out he's not, which is fantastic. I didn't want Tyrese to die that quickly. I really like Tyrese as a character in this. But 2, there's an inmate called Thomas, and he says he's in there for tax evasion or whatever. And when Herschel brings, you know, his family to the prison, there are 2 young girls, Susie and Rachel Green. And while looking for these girls, they're found decapitated in the barbershop of this prison. And I was honestly so shocked. I was mortified. When you see the panel as well, it's very disturbing. It's disturbing the way that it's revealed, and just the illustration of the panel, and well, panels, there is like a progression of them because they're zombies now, but they're decapitated. It was, oh my god, heart-wrenching, awful. And I had no idea what the fuck was going on because I didn't recall this from the TV show at all. But then I was like, well, who did it? Who did it? It probably was one of the survivors, because then they end up locking up one of the inmates who was in there for murder. And they're like, oh, you're the only person capable of doing something like that. And I was like questioning it. Like, I think it was probably one of our survivors, you know, like one of the like Atlanta survivors or something, or one of the Green. No, I don't think it would have been any of the Green family, but one of the Atlanta survivors. I think one of them would have snapped or something. And you know what? The the inmate makes a really good point in that they can't trust these people who have just come into the prison. Like, this was their home, like, from the start. Well, actually, their home for a while because they've been, incarcerated. But yeah, these survivors just randomly come in, take their food, and now people are dying and getting killed, and it's like, whoa, what the fuck? So I can totally say from the inmate's perspective. But then it turns out it was one of the inmates, Thomas, and he's crazy. He tries to kill Andrea, and they decide to play judge, jury, executioner and decide to murder Thomas, or, like, for justice. And there is this whole argument with, like, Laurie. Like, Laurie's opposing Rick so much. Like, she does in the TV show as well. She opposes Rick so much and his authority. And yes, he definitely does need to be reined in a lot. But, like, she does it, like, a lot. And I guess as his wife, that is probably what she feels obliged to do. So there's probably a bit more of a nuanced conversation with, what you're going to do with somebody who just murdered 2 little girls. I mean, I'm on the side that, yeah, hang them up. But yeah, you do have to still have those morally grounded characters in order to make sure that all of the survivors don't turn into, I don't know, wild beasts, just killing anyone willy-nilly, So that was a really exciting scene. It was really weird that Thomas would chase Andrea into the yard where everyone else is and, like, shouting, I'm gonna kill you, I'm gonna kill you. Like, shouldn't he have, like, been a little bit more smart in that regard and, like, not being as vocal about trying to kill Andrea in front of everyone? But I digress. That was a really shocking storyline. Oh yeah, actually, what happens after that? Patricia, who is part of the Green family, decides to let him free because they lock Thomas up, but then Patricia lets him go. And Patricia is part of the Green family, and he's just killed 2 little girls in the Green family. And I'm just like, make it make sense. But yeah, she ends up getting attacked by Thomas, and then Maggie shoots Thomas dead, and they give his dead body to the zombies, which is a form of, like, kind of justice for them. But then we end the volume with a couple of the other inmates, one of them who was wrongly locked up, accused of murdering the 2 girls, and he has the guns from one of the, I think it was like a military unit inside the prison that they knew about. They have some guns, and they're telling the survivors to get out, essentially. So, do the survivors have to leave? Or is there going to be a bit of a showdown? Are they going to kill the inmates? I feel a little bit conflicted about that because, yeah, the inmates were there first. And they haven't shown that they're bad people. One of them has, obviously, because he killed 2 little girls. But also, I'm like, would I feel safe there as well? I don't know. But again, like, they came into it late, and yeah, I don't know. I don't know what to think about that. Or what other people think about that. Like, is it morally right to, yeah, I don't know, be so against the inmates? I don't know. It depends. I don't know if I mentioned this, but when Carol thought that she lost Tyrese, she kisses Laurie, and I was like, whoa, okay. And you can totally get it. Like, in these kind of situations, people are dying left, right, and center. You don't know what your feelings are or what's going on. I'm putting this down because it's killing my hand. And I can imagine how confusing a time it would be. So it was just like a moment that really took me by surprise, but it kind of made the characters feel that little bit more real. Like, how are they dealing with the zombie apocalypse? How are they dealing with the stuff that's going on around them? Who should they be more afraid of, the people or the zombies? It's like that question that I think is so good at the TV show too. And it's carried throughout in volume 3. And I love the fact that we got to sit down a little bit more. We got to see more of the characters. There was still plenty of action, don't get me wrong. There was, like, still plenty of deaths. But I feel like we got more of an insight into their psyche. We got to see more of, Rick crumbling under the pressure and feeling so much, hurt over what's happening around him. We had more development with some of the secondary characters as well. Carl and Sophia, Laurie, Carol, Tyrese, and even the inmates were feeling a little bit more alive too. So I think this setting has, like, really helped with bringing the characters forward. So for that reason, I'm going to give volume 3 an 8 out of 10, I think. I think it's probably, like, one of my favourite volumes with the first volume. I don't know which one I prefer, the first or the third. Probably the first. I think I would probably say the first one is still my favourite because it opened up the world. It just feels iconic, and just, like, the storyline and the panels and the illustrations and what happens and just beginning the story was so fantastic. I think volume 3 was just so thrilling from beginning to end. It didn't overwhelm, like volume 2 did, where I just don't think we had enough of a chance to settle or, really take in what was happening, and things were just happening far too fast for my liking. But volume 3 was an improvement. It was an improvement. I liked it. And now I'm extremely excited about reading the rest of this prison storyline. I do think we're here for a little bit longer too. I don't think this is just like a 1-volume deal. Even though they're being told to get out, I'm kind of interested to see how that reveals, how that unravels. Yeah, I'm just so intrigued. I'm just dying to read the next volume now. I didn't really care too much for volume 4. Volume 4 was filled with a lot of drama, but not the good kind of drama. It was mainly kind of like relationship drama that led to some things that I mean, were quite interesting, and there is this really great scene at the end of this volume. But I think for the majority of this, I was reading like, not the biggest fan. And it's weird as well because we went from like a solid 8 for volume 1 and then 6 for volume 2, another solid 8 for volume 3. And I think I want to bring it maybe down to a 5 in volume 4. There were some unnecessary things that I just really didn't like, and it really did kind of ruin my enjoyment of this volume. So this volume actually started off really well. We started off with Michonne, and I've been waiting for Michonne to appear because I love her in the TV show, and I love her introduction so much, where she has the 2 zombies attached to her who turn out to be her boyfriend and best friend. Like, that is just such an iconic way of introducing yourself, and I loved it a lot more in the TV show than I did in here, because she instantly dispatches the 2 zombies she's with and gives over her weapons to the prison crew so that she can join them. So yeah, she's outside the prison. She helps Otis get inside as well because Otis is surrounded by zombies, and she dispatches them. So she saves him and lets him in. And yeah, so during this time as well, at the very end of volume 3, we had Dexter start to act irrationally and try to kick them all out. And few zombies come out of the armory and attacks them, so they have to work together. But Rick shoots Dexter in the head in all of the confusion on purpose so that, you know, he doesn't end up getting kicked out of the prison, which, you know, was a pretty cool moment actually. And it's again like that question of what would you do in that situation. You know, he's about to kick all of them out, including innocent kids, so what would you do? And it's not exactly the right way of going about it, and it does lead to some great questions towards the end of the volume 2 about humanity and the things we do and the law and rules and stuff like that. And you just kind of have to think, yeah, but it was also explored pretty well in the TV show as well, where, you know, you give somebody a chance and they come back and you pay for what you didn't do back then, sort of thing. And I remember, I think it was the episode Killer Within, where everything came to a head in season 3, and, you know, Rick paid for kind of, did Rick let them go, like the prison inmates, and they end up getting their revenge, and yeah, he ends up losing Laurie that way. Totally different in this, of course, but yeah, it did give me some kind of flashbacks to that episode, and I can see where that episode took inspiration from this comic series. So then some of the survivors end up going to the armory to see if there's more weapons, as well as dispatch more zombies, and Alan gets bitten in the leg. And I remember, again, in the TV show, but that was Herschel. Herschel got his leg bit, and Herschel ended up surviving. Alan doesn't. I was wondering when Alan would go, because he's been very melancholy since losing Donna, and the boys are, well, not exactly grounding him and pulling him back to the land of the living. It seems like Alan's wanted to die for a while, so it felt a little bit reckless of him. So I enjoyed that. I liked how that added more stakes to the story. But what I didn't like, okay, I really didn't like this. So as much as I love Michonne in the TV show, she comes across as not very good at all in the comic book series, and neither does Tyrese. Tyrese in this volume, it doesn't look good. Obviously, Carol and Tyrese are together, and during a scene, Michonne and Tyrese are in the gym, and Michonne gives Tyrese a blowjob, and Carol says it, and Carol ends up slitting her wrists because of it. Carol doesn't slit her wrists straight away though. She does like spend the night with Tyrese, and then, you know, kicks him out of the cell and all of that. So Michonne goes to him again, and she's like, who cares about her? And then turns out that Carol has slit her wrists, and Sophia's right there as well. It's quite horrible, quite harrowing, and it just made Tyrese and Michonne look like terrible, terrible people. Honestly, like, I don't think they came out this volume looking good at all. I don't know if I can even sympathize with them moving forward. They're going to have to do a lot to change my mind. And I feel so bad because I loved Michonne in the start of the TV show. I really did love her introduction. I loved the way that her and Andrea had this friendship, and they kind of really looked out for one another. And in this one, it seems like Michonne has just come into this prison, and the first thing she does is cause a rift between a couple, an already established couple. And that's not her purpose. That's not right. That's not the way I remember Michonne or want to root for a character. You know, it's her first introduction. This is how she's introduced, her first volume, and she does this. And I just find it such a disservice to the character, because she's such a badass and she's done nothing but cause problems so far anyway. In Tyrese as well, him and Rick have a huge fight when Rick finds out that Carol tried to kill herself over Tyrese, and it leads to, well, Rick blacking out for like 26 hours during this time as well. And something I didn't like, but I feel like it's probably realistic in this world, is that we have like the N-word used by Otis. Otis is saved by Michonne, and yet he uses the N-word to Patricia, and he hates Patricia as well because of her letting what was his name again? Thomas, the person who killed the kids in the previous volume. Patricia let him out, and Otis is like, we're done. But he talks about the black characters as N-words. So it was really harrowing to read that, and it felt really unnecessary. But at the same time, he's obviously racist, and this world has a lot of racists in it. And I just can't wait until the day Otis dies, quite honestly. He definitely died way earlier in the TV show as well, didn't he? And I don't think he ever used the N-word in the TV show either. But he's just so unrootable and so unlikable. In fact, a lot of these characters are so unlikable. I would probably say like maybe 50%, because we also have Glenn and Maggie. All they're doing is just going off and having sex. Like, seriously, that's all their storyline is. And Herschel is being very accepting of them, which is great. And Herschel is like, yeah, this is like a sin, but like it's not a real world anymore. I know you would want to marry Glenn if you could, and obviously you can't. So he's gonna like learn to deal with that. And it's really interesting to see how faith plays into this post-apocalyptic world, and how characters who are so filled with faith or religion have to deal with it. And that's an interesting look into it. So I like Herschel's side of it, but again, Glenn and Maggie haven't done anything but have sex, essentially. I've been enjoying seeing Laurie and Carol's friendship develop as well. Carol as well, when Rick wakes up, Carol kisses Rick, but she also kissed Laurie in a previous volume, and I can kind of see why, in a way. Like, Carol is the kind of person who, I guess, feels a lot of love, or like is wanting a lot of love from like the people around her, and she feels the most protected, the most safe when there is love there. And so she felt very safe and secure with Tyrese, but obviously he cheated on her, and now she kind of goes to the next person who she thinks will protect her. So I can kind of say that, and it's a good kind of exploration into that. But it is still a bit weird that she's kissed. She's kissed a lot of people, really. She's kissed a lot of people. But, that's neither here nor there. Again, I can't really say how I would react in those situations. I would kiss Rick too. So yeah, during this whole time, Rick is deteriorating. I mean, we thought we saw the pressure in the previous volume, but it's nothing compared to the pressure in this one. He thought he was doing what was right when he chopped off Alan's leg to stop the bite from killing him. His thought was definitely there, and I think it could have worked had the blood loss not taken over and killed Alan. But yeah, he definitely has like everyone's best interest at heart, but does he go around it the right way? It's debatable, very debatable, and that's what we do debate about in this one, because as Rick is blacked out and he wakes up, Dale comes and tells him, look, we've spoken, and there's going to be 4 people who are in charge rather than just you. So it's like Rick, Dale, Tyrese, and Herschel, I think it was. They're kind of like a committee, and Rick's first question is, what, no women? And yeah, like, no women? Like, what the fuck's happening with that? So I don't really like the way that the women have been portrayed so far. Like, even Andrea's kind of taken a backseat too. Like, she's now a seamstress, which is, like, fine. They do need new clothes, because they probably do smell of shit. But at the same time, I'm just like, they're so underusing the female characters in this. And the way that they've introduced Michonne in it, I'm just, like, so perplexed by that. And yeah, rather saddened by it as well. I'm not liking the way that that's kind of happened. But yeah, they're kind of starting their own little kind of government committee kind of thing to make sure that big decisions aren't just on one person's shoulders. So Rick isn't the one who's making all these really obscure decisions or like morally grey decisions, and it's kind of something that will be voted for in the future, which is fine. It's not a dictatorship like in the TV show. I totally see Rick's side of things again, and I don't think he's been a terrible leader at all. It's just, yeah, the pressure has been so intense, and I admire him for what he's done so far. And I do love the scene at the end when he approaches and talks to everyone about how they have to make tough decisions moving forward, how, they have to kill to live, whereas before he said, if you kill, you die. He's kind of like changing his mind about it, and it's like this huge deal. It's this huge scene where a lot of things come out as well about him killing the guy from the start, and he says that they are the Walking Dead. There are zombies outside, but they're the Walking Dead in there. They have to make do with what they've got because no one's coming to rescue them. And that was just a huge big scene. I love that scene so much. It was so good, very tense, and with everyone being there and seeing their reactions, it's just so, well, kind of heartbreaking as well, because then you realize, where is the hope, where is the joy, and it just feels so bleak and hopeless. And I do love that feeling, I really do. I just wish this whole volume didn't focus more on these really petty relationship things that happened and really soiling a lot of characters in like some really bad light. I just really wish that we had have not started out Michonne's character, for instance, being some kind of homewrecker. And I guess just the way that the female characters are being treated so far, it just doesn't seem to be very fair. Or like the way I think I just don't know. I don't know. They're not coming across as very likable. In fact, yeah, as I said, like 50% of the characters aren't very likable at the minute. So yeah, Volume 4 wasn't great. Not terrible by any means, but not great. Looking forward to seeing where we go from here. I do think we're supposed to meet the governor soon as well, which I'm looking forward to. So that should inject some more life into it's already kind of like bleak situation at this prison. I do like though that we are staying at this prison for more than just a volume. Honestly, like I'm really enjoying my time here. I like the exploration of character, whether I like the character or not. It's still a good exploration into them, but I'm just not liking what's happening, if you know what I mean. Anyway, it's convoluted, it's strange, but yeah, I'm still enjoying myself, so that's a good thing. Right, I was supposed to update you after I finished Volume 5. I read Volume 5, and then I read Volume 6, 7, and 8. I mean, I wanted to come and tell you all about Volume 5 and Volume 6 when I finished them, and things like that, and I finished Volume 6, and I was like, oh, you know what, this is a good point to talk to you guys about Volume 5 and 6 together, and then I just went ahead and just finished the whole, it seems like the whole prison arc. So let's talk about Volume 5 first. Volume 5 was the introduction of the governor, and I've been really excited for the governor. My cat has just started to go in the litter box to shit. And the other one is playing like fucking mad. It was really interesting to see how we were introduced to Woodbury in this, because I, again, had no idea how the governor was introduced, how Woodbury was introduced. So it seems like such an inconsequential thing, because Glenn and Rick just go outside of the prison to get gas from the nearby cars, and then they see a helicopter overhead, and the helicopter crashes. And so they're like, oh, let's, check it out. There might be some help. Who knows who it is? It might be military. It might be the news. You never know. Rick, Glenn, and Michonne end up going to the helicopter site, and they say that the helicopter site is empty. There is nobody there, and there's loads of footprints around. So somebody's obviously got to them first. So they decide to have a little bit of an explore, go further beyond than what they said they would go to find out what's happened. And then they end up coming across Woodbury, and they meet the governor. And it was... I thought maybe there would be a bit more time to spend with the governor to see him as this charismatic and really manipulative villain, but he kind of exposes himself pretty early on, like almost straight away, that he is not a good guy. Even though I think in his head he thinks he is, even though he's just like so messed up and so weird. And I'm so glad some things from the TV show were, taken from this, because I loved the introduction of the governor. I loved the fact that he had these like heads in these tanks so it looked like televisions, and also the fact that he still keeps his young girl, and the fact that he keeps his young girl, his lost daughter who's been bitten and is now a zombie, tied up so that he doesn't have to lose her. So you do get that bit of humanity retained, because you feel a bit sorry for him that, he's lost his daughter, she looks so young, and he loves her enough to keep her around. It was really interesting to see the parallels between the governor and Rick and how they lead. So we have the governor who puts on this huge facade in front of all of the people in Woodbury, and he has these arenas with these zombies that fight one another, but also they put a random stranger in there as well, and that's what happened to the helicopter crew. We didn't actually see the helicopter crew, actually. It would have been interesting to see who they were and what their story was, but they were before we got a chance to meet them. We also, now this shocked me because I didn't realise this happened. I might have heard that this happened at some point, but I totally forgot. But it's when the governor's asking Rick, where is your camp? Where is your, the base of operations, essentially, where are the rest of your people? Rick refuses to tell him, so the governor cuts off his hand. And I totally forgot that happened. It didn't happen in the TV show. So it took me by surprise. So I'm really glad that this series can still surprise me, even though I have read so many spoilers, I'm up to my earballs in them. But what the governor does to Michonne as well, so how I said in volume 4, I think it was, how it's very hard to sympathise with Michonne because she's come into this group and she's done something like so horrid to another person, and it was just like so heart-wrenching what she had done and what she's putting like Carol through, for instance. Her and Tyrese together, it was just like, I didn't enjoy that. But in this, I couldn't help but feel so much sympathy for Michonne and what the governor puts her through, and it just tore my heart in two. I was like, oh my god, stop, please. It's awful what he does to her. It definitely made me appreciate Michonne a whole lot more, even though I do still wish that she had had a better introduction into the prison. Glenn is also forced to hear the things that happen between Michonne and the governor, which is so mortifying as well. Like, this comic book series is just so phenomenally dark. And it's gotten dark so quickly. I thought it would have taken a bit more time to get to like some of the really dark shit. But we did have 2 young girls get decapitated in volume 3, so, you know. But it is awful what happens to Michonne, and the fact that Glenn has to overhear it too. It's just, it made me feel so, gross and horrible. But yeah, Rick is recovering. Dr. Stevens is looking after him and tells Rick about the governor in Woodbury and all of that. Back at the prison as well, Carol's so weird in this series, honestly. But at the same time, I'm like, okay, because she goes to Laura and she's like, why don't me, you and Rick marry? Like, why don't we become a throuple kind of thing? And it seems to be out of nowhere, but at the same time, Carol is somebody who craves a kind of human interaction. She craves that intimacy, and you can really tell that it has such a huge effect on her mind and her well-being, that she's trying to grasp at things, grasp at ideas that will make her feel, you know? And with this being a whole new world with new rules and new social constructs, like what is acceptable, what isn't acceptable. And so I can't blame Carol for suggesting that to Laurie, especially since Carol is very, very close to Laurie, and she's kissed both Laurie and Rick. So it just seems like it is a bit weird, but at the same time I'm like, okay, this is something. But other than that, that's pretty much all that happened in volume 5, I think, from what I remember. I should have updated right after I finished it. But yeah, I really enjoyed it, and I'm gonna give it, I think, 7 out of 10. Absolutely loved the introduction to the governor, I really did. If the camera shakes, it's because my cats are running so hard against the floor, it's shaking the entire floor. It is. At least they're keeping themselves entertained. So yeah, I really enjoyed this volume, and I thought it was a step in the right direction, and it was good. It was good. Volume 6 was again very interesting and got my heart racing a bit because I was so unclear about the storyline or where it was going. So I enjoyed seeing them escape Woodbury. They do escape with the help of Martinez. And what I loved about it though is that Michonne got her revenge on the governor, and it was brutal. It was so brutal. I really do wish, spoilers for like the next 2 volumes, I really do wish that Michonne had have killed the governor. I really do. I think we could have avoided so much conflict later on if she'd gone all the way and killed him at the end of her torture. But, you know, she left him for dead, assuming that he would die. And when you see him as well, when you see what she does to him, you would think that he would die from that, but he doesn't. So, oh well. But it was, oh my gosh, so... I was so happy for Michonne though, because I was like, she deserves this revenge, honestly. But it's just so gross, and you think, God, I don't think I could do that to someone. But again, you just never know when you're in a zombie apocalypse and you're dealing with somebody as awful as a governor. Like, he is, oh my gosh, so evil. I feel like he's probably more evil in this than he ever was in the TV show. Even though the TV show definitely developed him more, because I think there was just more time, more episodes to flesh him out. Whereas in this one, you just don't really get that, because, yeah, you don't really get too much more than what you get, I guess. It's a weird way of putting it. But if you know what I mean, like, he's not as developed as he is in the TV show. Okay, no more comparisons. But yes, Martinez helps, you know, Glenn, Rick, and everyone escape, including Alice, who is a nurse or like assistant to Dr. Stevens in Woodbury, and she wants to go and escape Woodbury and help out. So she ends up going to the prison with them too. When they get to the prison, right? Oh, also before that, Michonne catches up to them at the helicopter. But okay, so when they get to the prison, it's overrun with zombies. And I was like, oh my God, how the fuck did this happen? Well, you see Otis dead as well. And I was kind of glad about that because I didn't like Otis. But I was so excited to see, oh my gosh, like they've been overrun. Like, what's happened? Like, so much has like happened that we haven't seen and we need to see it. But they do clear them out. I do feel like these survivors now are so good at handling the zombies that we don't really get too much focus on them clearing things out or fighting these zombies anymore. It usually happens in maybe a couple of panels and then, you know, the whole thing's resolved. So like it has kind of lessened the impact on the threat of the zombies, the fact that these survivors are just so good at it, which I guess is a great thing because this prison arc, this prison storyline has really grounded the characters and made them develop, especially when it comes to their skills and their survival. And that's what makes the end of volume 8 that much more exciting. So anyway, back to the current story. Rick tells them about Woodbury and what they're doing and that they need to prepare for an attack. But also Martinez has gone missing now. Where the fuck is he? Well, he's going back to Woodbury to, tell them of where the prison is. So I'm a little bit conflicted about what Rick does here, because Rick chases him down and runs him over with the RV and kills him, even though Martinez is saying, I'm not going to tell the governor that, the prison is there. I'm going to get the people who deserve, a chance to survive and get away from evil. There's kids in Woodbury, there's women and men who have nothing to do with what the governor's doing. At the same time, Martinez didn't have to leave under such suspicious circumstances if that was the case, If he really wanted to go back to Woodbury and save the innocent people there, he could have told Rick, and he could have told them, like, oh, there's kids there, like, we need to go and help them. And if we get them, then their defenses are stronger as well against the governor. But he doesn't do that. He literally just makes off on his own and tries to run away and stuff like that, which honestly is so suspicious. So I genuinely don't believe that Martinez wanted to just help the people in Woodbury, otherwise he would have said something. But at the same time, there was a little part of me that's like, but what if he did? And Rick just like killed him in cold blood, Like it's hard. Like, I don't envy Rick's position at all. And I think if they had have helped with the survivors in Woodbury as well, I think we would have had a different outcome from what comes at the end of Volume 7 and Volume 8, when everything goes to shit. So I think some bad decisions were made, but not exactly 100% Rick's fault. It would have made it very, very interesting. And I do enjoy the fact that we got more development as well between Glenn and Maggie. Glenn proposes to Maggie and he gets this ring off a dead woman's finger, which, it's not ideal, but what else is he going to do, So I'm going to give this one another 7 out of 10. Again, I think it developed the story really, really well. And it's definitely, I think, my favourite storyline. Actually, this whole prison arc has just been like one of my favourite storylines so far. And just continues to be exciting and, gripping, and a great look into the character's psyche and what they do and the choices they make and all of that, and how it kind of comes back to bite them in the ass. So yeah, Volume 6 was another really, really good one. I really enjoyed it. Volume 7 starts out with a bit of a flashback. We have Laurie and Shane pretty much having sex, and Laurie going to Rick because, yeah, she's just thinking about it and she's in bed with Rick, and she says, Rick, I have to tell you something, and it's about Shane. But Rick's like, don't say anymore. I know. Whether or not the baby is his, I don't care. Her, the baby, and Carl is all he has. And you know what, as soon as that happened, because I do know what happens to Laurie and Judith, I do know. But as soon as he said that, I was like, if I didn't know that, I would think that was like huge foreshadowing of what's to come. Because I think it's quite on the nose sometimes when you have, especially when it comes to Rick, there's kind of moments where, oh, everything's going to be fine, everything's, focused on one thing, like say Laurie and her love and the fact that he only has her and Carl and Judith. And you just know, oh, well, something bad's going to happen now, isn't there? It's just, I can really feel it through the illustration. I can really feel it through the writing. And it's not a bad thing at all. I think it's really, really good. I think it's great that it sets that up and makes you kind of worry in the back of your mind, because even though I knew what was coming, my anticipation for it was kind of quickening when I was like reading stuff like that. It made me care a bit more, and it made me a bit more emotionally involved and more kind of worried about what would happen next. So yeah, even though I knew certain things, I didn't know when they would happen or how they would happen, and it's just non-stop anxiety at this point. Non-stop anxiety reading this prison arc, knowing what I know. But yeah, it's a great start to the volume, even though it seems like it's taking things a little step back, with Shane and stuff. You're like, oh, we're going back in the past again. But, the past sometimes has to come back to be resolved almost. But Rick does say he doesn't care, and him and Laurie are stronger than ever, really. And then so much happens in the rest of Volume 7 that honestly just made me so excited for what was to come. So Volume 7 as well, I'm going to give an 8 out of 10. I think it's definitely one of the stronger ones from the last few I've read, and probably one of my favourite ones since the first volume. In this, we had some of the survivors. There was like Glenn, Maggie, Andrea, Axel, Tyrese, and Michonne. They go out in the RV and they go to a local kind of Well, they're trying to find the National Guard or something like that. It's a building with loads of weapons, and it's where the Woodbury survivors have been getting their weapons. So they go there and they take what they can, they blow it up so that the Woodbury people can't get anything else from there. But on the way back, they see a shopping place, I think it was like a Walmart or something, and they decide to go in, get some supplies, get a crib for Laurie and the baby. And when they're there, some Woodbury thugs come by, and there's a bit of a kerfuffle, a bit of a fight, and the Woodbury people are obliterated. Like, they kill them all, even though it's like a close call, they still kill them all. And we don't know how Glenn is, because Glenn gets shot, but he's wearing the riot gear and stuff, so he's not too badly damaged. But at this point I was like, oh, the prison survivors can really hold their own against the Woodbury survivors, you know? If they're going to be in a battle, I genuinely feel like the prison survivors will win. I feel like that moment was quite pivotal in going forward, the kind of war that ends up breaking out between them. When it comes to strength, it seems like the prison survivors would win. But, you know, it's a bit more of a nuanced conversation there. At the same time as all of this is happening, because she has no great timing at all, Laurie ends up going into labour. And I must say, the point where she goes into labour in the TV show is definitely far worse than in this one. At least they're not being attacked at this moment. So Laurie goes into labour, but it is going to get dark. So Alice needs Dale and Billy. I don't think I've mentioned Billy at all in this vlog, but Billy is part of the Green family, and he's one of the youngest. I think he's only like 19 or something. And he and Dale go outside so that they can get gas from the cars, so that they can power up the generator, so that during the night when Laurie's in labour, they can, you know, keep the electricity on, so that the labour is an easy process. So they go outside, and like, honestly, like, Billy's, God love him, but like, he is a little bit useless, and Dale had no chance really, so they do get a little bit overwhelmed by zombies, and Dale gets bitten in the leg, just like, what was his name again? I'm forgetting everyone's names. Alan? I think it was Alan. When Alan got bit and Rick chops his leg off, but the blood loss and stuff made Alan die. Well, Dale, they get him back to the prison, just in time as well for the prison survivors who have just killed a few Woodbury people to come back and to help. And they do chop off Dale's leg, and Dale ends up surviving. So that was the whole Herschel thing, from what I remember from the TV show, is Dale. And I thought it was just going to be Alan. I thought Alan was the one who got bit in the leg and chopped off, and it didn't work, but they thought it would. I didn't realise Dale would then lose his leg for the procedure to work. So that was really surprising. I enjoyed that. I thought Dale was a goner, because I have no idea what Dale's fate is in this. I don't know Andrea's fate. I don't know Rick's fate, Carl's fate, Michonne's fate. I don't know theirs, and a few others, but there are some who I do know die. But I do think the people I knew die in the next volume. So yeah. So yeah, after I talk about the next volume and start the volumes after that, I'm kind of on my own. I don't really know people's fates after that. So in amongst all of this darkness and grimness in the world, we have Laurie deliver her baby, and she is fine. She's absolutely fine. We have Judith born into the world, new hope, new life. You know, it can only be up from here, right? Well, it is such a nice moment to see them be a family, you know, and even Carl's like, oh, she's cute, and he's going to protect her, and it's just so charming and so adorable. Oh, it just hurts my heart even more when I remember what happens to the next fucking volume. But anyway, sticking to this one, oh, there is like a weird moment between Carol and Laurie again. I think it's like a week or so after this has happened, and Carol is like, you would look after Sophia, wouldn't you? And Laurie's like, yeah, of course. And then, like, I thought Carol did commit suicide. I thought she does kill herself, but I thought because she tried a few volumes back when she catches Michonne and Tyrese, she was going to die then, and she didn't. So I was like, oh, well, maybe I don't know how Carol dies, because I thought that was when she was supposed to die. So when she ends up going into the grounds of the prison and there is a zombie that's tied up, I think for Alice's experiments or whatever, like Alice wants to try and study her, Carol talks to her and she's like, you're the only one who listens and stuff like that. And then she walks towards this walker, or they don't call them walkers actually, they call them roamers or biters and things like that in this. She walks towards this zombie and allows the zombie to eat her neck. And it's such a harrowing and, oh my god, visceral moment in this. And I was taken by surprise. I didn't realise that was how she would die. And it's so sad as well. Like, I feel like Carol's had such a sad arc. And you can tell her mental health really deteriorated the more she spent at the prison and after certain events had happened. And the need for, you know, human interaction. She does sleep with Billy just before she does this as well. And I think that was like her desperate last attempt at human connection or something. I mean, it doesn't get explored or anything like that, but I think we're left to determine what was going through Carol's mind as she was doing this. And I have so much sympathy for her. I didn't like when, I think Tyrese, I don't know if it was this volume or the next, but Tyrese says something about he has no sympathy for Carol because she took her life. I'm just like, Tyrese, there were things that you did that really didn't help her mental health whatsoever. And the way he went about it was so unforgivable because he doesn't really apologize to Carol. He doesn't sit her down and like try to clear the air. He just lets it carry on, you know, and he gets to go off with Michonne and do what he wants with Michonne, but he doesn't actually, you know, resolve his problems or issues with Carol. And obviously, like, I'm not blaming Tyrese wholly on Carol's suicide or anything like that, but you saw that she was so happy beforehand, and it was that moment when she catches Michonne and Tyrese that really did a whole 180 on her and really pulled the rug out from under her feet. So it just felt like Tyrese just didn't care, and it was mean to me. It just felt mean and so unnecessary. Moving on from this, Dale is starting to get accustomed to having only one leg. They do put something on his leg though so that he can walk, and we also have Glenn and Maggie want to have a baby. Then as life seems to be going back to normal, their governor comes. The governor comes, he's got a tank, he's got his Woodbury crew, and he says kill them all. And that's how the volume ends, and it was so... it was so exciting and so action-packed, and I was like, well, fuck. Shit is going to hit the wall now. And I was like, I can't update the vlog now because I need to read Volume 8 right now. So all in all, Volume 7 was so good. It had so many dramatic moments and so many, oh gosh, heart-wrenching moments as well. So many surprising things happened too. And it just continued this storyline, and you can really feel the tension build in it. And even though it's a con before, there was still huge things happened before all the shit hits the fan. But no, great volume in my eyes, and I couldn't wait to read the next one. At first, I thought I wasn't going to enjoy this volume as much because it started off with flashbacks to what happened to the Woodbury survivors, what happened to the governor after Michonne mutilated him, and the whole town had to deal with that. And I was a little bit worried because I remember in the TV show, before the season 4 mid-season finale, there was, I think, maybe 2 governor-centric episodes that showed a lot of backstory, but that just got dragged out far too long. I was like losing interest at that point, and I didn't really love the fact that we had this overtly long flashback almost to the Woodbury and stuff. At least from what I recall, I think it was like 2 episodes. It was done really well in the comic books because we didn't spend too long on looking back. We were kind of only looking at these events to see the storyline moving forward. So I loved when, you know, the governor, he's coming round, he's getting taken care of, and he talks to the Woodbury survivors, and he really does convince them that these people are terrible people. And you know what, I feel like if you were part of the Woodbury survivors, you would believe him because he is so manipulative. And the fact that the prison survivors haven't really done a whole lot to their group that would make them good people in their eyes, you know, such as like Dr. Stevens dying. Obviously that wasn't their fault, but obviously he could try and pin that on them and they would believe it because he was made into a zombie. And same with Martinez, he was killed by Rick, although the Woodbury people, they found him zombified and they cut off his head and they pretend that that's what they did to him and they make them seem like monsters, and it does come across quite believable. So I like that we had that exploration before we have this all-out war at the prison. So then we have our first assault on the prison, and at this point, I mean, I wasn't sure what was going to happen. I knew certain things, but I didn't know the unfolding of events. And I was like getting really worried, but then it turned out that the prison survivors are a lot better trained than the Woodbury survivors. The Woodbury survivors seemed quite sloppy and they couldn't really hit anyone essentially. They do end up, getting Rick in the abdomen, and Andrea gets a non-fatal shot and Axel is wounded too. But nobody on the prison side is like fatally wounded. Whereas on the Woodbury side, it looks like they're very, outmatched, not by number, but by skill. So I wasn't too worried at this point, and the Woodbury survivors, they do fall back. But one thing that I think is like one of the worst decisions that you could have made was Michonne and Tyrese going out and thinking that they can handle it themselves. The fact that that was the first moment where people started to split off, when the prison survivors obviously had better tactics. They had better defense. They had better skilled gun users, gunners. I don't know. Even though that as soon as they come back, they can defend and they will be able to get down as many of them in number as possible. The fact that Michonne and Tyrese end up splitting off so that they can do something, which I get why, because obviously they would be surprised by an attack, but it's the most sloppy of plans I've ever seen. Like, this volume is filled with sloppy plans that makes for this concoction of bad decision making and people losing their lives when they didn't need to lose their lives. And it's infuriating, honestly. But yeah, Tyrese and Michonne do kill a couple of people, but they get caught, and Tyrese is then used as a sort of bargaining chip with Rick and the governor, so he is held hostage. And I remember this moment so well from the TV show too. It wasn't Tyrese, it was Herschel, and oh god. So yeah, the governor tries these scare tactics, but everyone inside is like, you know, don't do anything, and Tyrese is like, don't let them in, and the governor decapitates Tyrese and tells his Woodbury people that it was them, the prison people, who did that to their own people. So as this is happening, Dale, Andrea, Maggie, Glenn, a couple of the kids, they get in the RV and leave. And like at this point, I'm just like, oh. I mean, obviously they do need to be safe. They need to, and I can understand why Dale was like, oh, let's go in the RV, let's leave. You know, I can understand why. I can really see why. But it's the fact that they're splitting off. That is what the prison survivors' downfall was. It was the thinning out of numbers, the poor decision making on not just one person's part, but on pretty much everyone's part, and pretty much allowing the Woodbury survivors to come to the prison and actually enter this time. You know, I feel like if they had just stayed together, kept a stronger unit, they would have done so much better, honestly. And so much bad decision making. I mean, fortunately, they do come back in the RV. Andrea is the best shooter of all of them. I am so pissed off now at what they did to Andrea in the TV show. She is phenomenal in the comic series. I was a little bit worried about Andrea to begin with because it seemed like she would be left behind when, you know, the guys were going out hunting or whatever, and she would just be like the seamstress and stuff. But no, like, we've now gotten to a point where Andrea is actually the best person with a gun, and I love that for her, but I hate what they did to her in the TV show. It's, oh my gosh, it infuriates me now when I think about it. And seeing Andrea come back as well instilled me with so much hope. I was like, Andrea, why did you leave in the first place? So there's a lot of chaotic things happening, and there is just so much death and destruction happening around everyone that it's just hard to pay attention to one little thing because so much was happening. And because of like how messy everything is, it just leads to probably like the most heartbreaking moment in the comic series for me personally so far. And that is when Rick goes inside the prison. She is trying to get Laurie and his daughter and Carl to safety, and he takes them out of there, and outside when all the gunfire's happening, I don't know why he really did that. I know they're trying to escape the prison and stuff, but at the same time I'm just like, if that was the case, why didn't Laurie just get in the RV earlier on with Judith, and she would have been safer, you know? So again, I'm not too sure why certain decisions were made, but yeah, they go out into the line of fire, and as they're running, the governor and other henchmen are telling, you know, the other Woodbury survivors to shoot and kill. And this woman called Lily, who's just a normal part of the Woodbury crew, she isn't really like a big fighter or anything, but she aims for Laurie. She shoots her in the back, and I think the bullet goes through Judith as well, I think. But Laurie does collapse. She collapses on top of Judith, and it looks like both of them are dead. That was, it killed me. It honestly killed me. I knew it was going to happen, but it killed me. It was so... and then seeing Rick's reaction straight away as well, and Carl just running. Carl doesn't look behind, he just continues running. It's just, oh my god, I mean, like, it's so close, like, so close. And if, I can't even explain, like, how she could have gotten out of that situation if she had stayed in the prison, what would have happened, you know? But it's just heartbreaking, honestly. While I might not have loved Laurie as a character, I was so hopeful for what was going to happen, like, in the future, maybe with Judith. Even though I knew what was going to happen. But I thought, if I read it myself, maybe it'll change. Maybe the outcome will be different. But no, she dies, and so does Judith. And it's just, oh god, it's awful, absolutely awful. And that's probably why the comic series is definitely darker than the TV show, because the TV show would never do that. The TV show would never allow, you know, kids being decapitated, or a baby, you know, getting crushed to death by her mother falling on top of her, you know? It's, oh my god, like, that's, even just saying it out loud, I get shivers, and But now the Woodbury survivors have realised what the governor has made them do, you know, and made them kill a baby. They turn on the governor gets betrayed and gets eaten by zombies, which is Chef's kiss. Loved his downfall. It was so apt, and yeah, it was about time. It was about time he died. I liked that. And yeah, that's the last we see of the prison for now, I think. Colin and Rick have escaped, but they're by themselves, so who else survived, we don't really know. I do know that Billy, Patricia, Laurie and Judith are definitely dead. So is Axel. Axel's dead too. Tyrese is dead. So we do have a lot of casualties in this volume, and it's... oh my gosh, it really tugged my heartstrings, this one. So I want to give this volume an 8 out of 10 again. I don't think it's my favourite volume so far, but I think 8 is quite a high rating still. I don't know what it will take for me to give it a 9 out of 10, honestly. I feel like 8 is a bit of a ceiling at the minute. I might change ratings at the end of this vlog. I might go through all of the volumes in hindsight and say, oh, I actually did like that more, and shuffle things around a bit, so stick around for that. I might change my ratings in the future. But 8 for now, 8 out of 10. Not exactly perfect, but definitely exciting, definitely heartbreaking. It just makes me so excited about this next arc. So that means I finished Compendium 1, and I can now start Compendium 2. It's getting so dark, it's gonna rain. And it's still quite early as well, so this is perfect. I can read the rest of Compendium 2 in the rain. I love it. Anyway, I finished volume 10. No, volume 9. I finished volume 9, and it was so good. I'm loving this arc of it. I feel like we had a little bit of a rough start with The Walking Dead. Like, I really enjoyed the first volume, don't get me wrong. The first volume was great. I love the setup of it. But then I feel like after that, it's been maybe just a little bit uneven, and maybe things were moving a little too fast. But I feel like we're kind of hitting our stride now. I don't know why I slapped it. Like, that was a little bit sexual. I feel like we've slowed down a little bit. We've really taken it all in, and especially after the epicness of the prison and how all of that ended, it was nice to have a volume where we really did go a little bit deeper into some of the characters' minds. Yeah, I was just so interested to see what would happen next. And following the prison escape, we have Carl and Rick to begin with, and they are by themselves. They're trying to survive. They come across a house, and it's just, I mean, one thing, like Carl, poor Carl, you know, he's just like, he's still a young boy, and he's had to see and witness so much, and it was heartbreaking again to see him and how he copes with the death of his mum and sister, and the fact that Rick is, you know, he's still hurt, and you know, he was shot in a previous volume, and he's still hurt, he's a little bit sick, so Carl feels like he has to like defend himself. He goes outside, he kills 3 walkers by themselves. Well, I'm saying they're walkers, roamers, biters, you know, I'll probably end up just calling them walkers. But he does end up killing 3 of them by himself. For him being such a young kid, it's just, it's necessary, and it's heartbreaking when he talks to his dad like, just die, you know, like everyone dies, just leave me, he'll be fine, you know. And it's like, God, he's just so young to be saying stuff like that, and it's just heartbreaking. And we also have an interesting plot point, which I do kind of remember from the show as well, but it happened differently like a lot of stuff does. We hear Rick hear a phone, and he picks up the phone, and it turns out to be his wife, Laurie, from the dead. And she says that there are 14 of them or something with her, and I think that's just the people who died from the start of the comic series. And I wonder if we will get more of a look into that. He has taken the phone with him, you know, when they leave the house, he does take the phone with him, so I imagine that's not the end of that storyline, but it means that there's a connection between him and Michonne as well, because Michonne ends up finding them, and they head for the Green Farm, which was very briefly in volume 2, and yeah, all the other survivors had the same idea, so they end up going to the farm as well. So everyone who survived is together again. So Herschel didn't survive. And with Michonne, and I don't think I've mentioned it at all in this vlog so far, but Michonne does talk to somebody. She's been caught a couple of times talking to apparently no one, like no one's in front of her, and Michonne is talking, and then when they say, oh, who are you talking to? Michonne's always like, no one. And I wasn't talking, like she's always defensive about it. But we actually finally get to understand that in this one, because Rick finds her talking to no one, and he asks her, and she says, I talk to my dead boyfriend, you know, it helps me cope. It sometimes feels like he's in control and he's helping and stuff like that. Again, like we get this insight into Michonne and what she's going through. And this connection now with Rick, because Rick tells her, yeah, I hear my dead wife on the phone. So it sounds crazy, but you know, with them both together, it's like great. And also, you know, my cats have been so quiet while I've been reading. As soon as I start filming, they start to play again. This always happens. Trying to not let them distract me. So yeah, they're at the farm, and it seems like things might go back to normal-ish. And then in walks in, I think probably my favourite character so far, because I love Abraham, okay? I liked him in the TV show, but I love the way he's introduced in this. So he is with Rosita and Eugene, just like in the TV show. Eugene has information about the virus and how to stop it, and he's on his way to DC. And Rosita and Abraham are helping him get there. And I took photos of the pages I enjoyed and Abraham's interactions. When the survivors are kind of questioning Eugene, Abraham's like, the thing about smart fuckers is that sometimes they sound like crazy motherfuckers to stupid motherfuckers. I hope you guys aren't a bunch of stupid motherfuckers because Eugene here sure is fucking crazy. And I'm just like, the amount of swearing, okay, firstly, the amount of swearing is insane, but like I really enjoy that. And just like the way that Abraham just butts heads with him instantly, especially Andrea. Like he really doesn't get on with Andrea to begin with and calls her Scarface and stuff like that. And it's quite funny to see them interact, but they do really see it from their perspective and how, you know, they're in a farm and Abraham mentions a herd and he's gone for a shit again. Abraham's mentioned a herd and they're like, what's a herd? And he tells them like very ominously, like, you know, just one gunshot, one noise you make, the walkers, the zombies will hear you and they will start coming towards you and they will not stop, and then they will end up joining with other walkers and other zombies and it'll just merge into this one huge herd, and they've never had to experience like a huge herd like that before. So just the mention of that, like I said in the previous volume review about foreshadowing and the idea that something will come back from just like a little thing that's mentioned. And I do feel like now we're definitely going to get this huge herd coming at some point, and planting that seed in the volume, it's exciting, but it makes me scared of what's coming up. So Rick is still struggling with leading people. He feels like everything's his fault and he is allowing Dale to kind of more call the shots. I mean, it is a group decision that they leave the farm with Abraham, Eugene, and Rosita. But Rick has kind of took a step back. He's like, if you go, I'll go. If you stay, I'll stay. Stuff like that. But then he does sit Carl down at the end and he's like, look, if you ever want to leave the group, because it might be safer just you and I, then just say it. So Rick isn't as attached, I guess, to the group as he is in the TV show from what I remember. Because he seems like he's ready to abandon them at any moment, really. Which is a little bit sad. I love the bond between the survivors in the TV show, and it feels like the bond isn't really as prominent in the comic series. But I can totally understand because Rick wants to protect Carl at all costs. Carl is all he has left now, and he feels like he's made some bad decisions, which he kind of has. But now he's like, look, it's you and I, me and you, going forward, what you do, I do, we are in this together kind of thing. So that was like a nice moment between father and son, and it's actually quite nice to see Rick and Carl develop more as, you know, a father-son dynamic in this volume as well. I feel like we were missing a lot of that in the previous few volumes, and it seemed like the Carl and Rick relationship wasn't as prominent until right this moment. So it was nice to see as well Rick showing Carl how to drive and stuff. That was a bit of a comical moment. And yeah, it was just like really good. And I'm really enjoying Carl's character as well. I didn't like Carl in the TV show to begin with. I did get used to him by the point I got up to watching, and I did like him by the end of my watch of it. I think it was like end of season 6, start of season 7. But I find him a lot more likable in this. He's very resourceful. Yeah, he's great in this, really. I'm surprised at how much I like Carl when I didn't fully love him in the TV show to begin with. So yeah, that's volume 9, start of the next sort of arc that we're going into. Excited to see where we go from here. I will give volume 9 a 7 out of 10. I thought, even though we definitely didn't have as much action from the previous volume at all, it was still nice to have that little bit of a breather and explore the characters a little bit more too. So yeah, it was a really good volume again. And I don't think we've had a bad volume yet. So there's still time, I guess. My cats have decided to calm down for this update. Finished volume 10 and it was another really, really good one. This is just like all I'm saying. Like, I'm probably repeating myself so much at this point. But yeah, I'm just really enjoying the story a bit. We start off this one with a dream. Rick is still feeling so guilty about what happened to Laurie, and he has a dream where she is a zombie and kisses him and eats him alive. And I love that manifestation of his guilt being so, I don't know, like literal in his dreams. You know, his wife, his dead wife, eating him alive. It's like the guilt is eating him alive. And it's so visceral again, and it's so wonderfully told. I'm loving the exploration of his grief. And I feel like that's the overall theme for this volume, is exploring what they've done in the past and how it's affecting them and whether or not they made the right decisions. A bit later on, we do have Rick and Abraham and Carl go back to where Carl and Rick used to live, because Rick, well, one, wants to see if he can find Morgan and Dwayne, and two, to go to the police station there so that they can get more supplies, more weapons, more ammunition and things like that, because Rick still has the keys on him, which I find a nice little character detail about him. So yeah, we're exploring this grief and these decisions, and something big happens on their way there, and I remember a part of it happening in the TV show, and I do think it happens just a little bit differently with, I think, different people present, but the same thing kind of happens. So we run into three thugs, three really bad people, and they are. Oh, well, they say it's like their road, and they try and do something really bad to Carl in front of Rick and Abraham. So Rick, being the father that he is, wanting to protect his son at all costs, rips the throat out from somebody with his teeth. And it was so gross and disgusting. But when you're in that situation, the only thing that he could do was kind of reduce himself into being a sort of a walker, a zombie, in order to stop him. And it was really cool to see the living do something that the dead do. It's so disgusting and so gross, but it's what they deserved. And so they end up killing the people who try to do the really bad thing to Carl. And it leads to a conversation between Rick and Abraham about what they've had to do in the past. And we get more backstory with Abraham as well. I'm really loving the relationship between Abraham and Rick, actually, because at the start of the volume, it seems like Abraham might kill Rick because Rick is out having a wee and Rick gets attacked by a walker, but Abraham shoots the walker. But when Abraham is talking to Rosita a little bit later on, he says that he was already pointing the gun in that direction. Was he going to shoot Rick? Who knows? And he begs Rosita to get him to not kill again. And we find out why, because his previous family, his wife and daughter and stuff, they were raped, and he savagely tore apart the people who did that. And it's ate on his mind ever since. His family left him and then died. So these decisions that Rick and Abraham have made have come back to hurt them, and they are both so ridden with guilt that it's really interesting to explore how they're dealing with it and how they're coping with it. So I'm really enjoying the exploration of them doing that. Poor Carl as well, he has not had a good time recently. But anyway, they do get to Rick's old house, but they don't go in. They go next door where Morgan is with his son, but it turns out that Morgan's son Dwayne has died and he is now a zombie, and Morgan has kept him, a bit like the governor did with his daughter, kept the zombified version of his son alive in a way. So Rick tells Morgan to come with him and gives him a gun to shoot Dwayne and let him rest in peace, but Morgan doesn't shoot his son, he just lets him go. So we have a zombified Dwayne roaming around. I don't know if that's going to come back at any point, if that decision's going to, you know, have consequences later on. I don't know. It does seem like they're getting further and further away from the original area where we first started off with in the series. So I don't think we will see Dwayne again, but I could be wrong. And then really excitingly, we have the group, Rick, Abraham, Carl and Morgan. They run into a huge herd, like the biggest herd they've ever seen, and they only just get out barely. So they go back to the place where they left the other group and have told them to leave. Dale is pissing me off a little bit, not gonna lie. For one, he's an old man, so there's not much that he can do, but keeps trying to convince Andrea to ditch everyone else and stay with him. And he's saying, oh, I know best. Look, I don't think you do. I don't think I ever really mention the twins, the boys that Andrea and Dale look after, who were Donna's and Alan's sons. They're a little bit one of them's a little bit fucked up. We see one of them leaning over a cat that little boy has killed. And honestly, it was just like looking at my babies as well, it broke my heart. And you know, when you see a kid do something like that and harm animals like that, obviously they're fucked up and they're crazy and they need to be stopped. And it's given me just look at the flowers, Lizzie vibes from that, you know. So I'm interested to see where we go with these twins, because I don't actually know what happens to them specifically. I just vaguely know a storyline similar to that in the TV show. So yeah, they make me a little bit worried. But yeah, Andrea is best off not staying with Dale and the twins, because Dale is like, yeah, let's just split off from the rest of them. Rick doesn't know what he's doing. Rick keeps putting them in danger. And it's funny because to Rick's face, Dale says different things. He tries to console Rick. He says that he's still a good person and stuff like that. But then behind his back, Dale is like, let's leave them because Rick doesn't know shit. And Dale was the very first person to shit stir in this series as well. Do you remember? Like, the very first time he meets Rick, he warns him about Shane, which, like, it turns out he was right about Shane, of course, but, like, as the first thing you say to someone who you've just met, really? I think Dale just likes to stir the pot, quite honestly. So that was interesting, and I know I shouldn't say I want any of them to die, but I kind of want Dale to die. Dale, the twins, leave Andrea be. Andrea is getting pulled back so many times from him. And I just need this relationship to stop. I need Andrea to move on to bigger and better things, essentially. So yeah, that's how we've ended the volume. So the whole group is having to leave because a huge herd is coming towards them. And again, I love how scary the zombies are still coming across as. One thing I think the TV show Sure. One thing I think the TV show lost sight of is how scary the zombies can be. And I don't think we've ever let up in the comic series just how dangerous they still are. Because we have a bit of a speech, I think it's either Abraham or Eugene, talking about, because Dale says, oh, well, we can just stay in this house. They'll obviously go by the house. And I think it's Eugene. He says, oh, but one of them might brush the handle or something and then think that something's inside, and then another zombie might think there's something inside and then they'll try and get in. Like, they are mindless, but they do hunt. They are there to eat. They are there to find and hunt people. So, like, the smallest thing, the very smallest thing, can still attract their attention, and that could be the end. So we still have this undercurrent of terror with these zombies, and I really enjoy that. So I think I'm going to give volume 10 a 7 out of 10 again. I really enjoyed the fact that we went back to, the original place where we lived. I love that we got to see Morgan again. Again, the group dynamic is being shattered. We have Dale being a little bit of a snake and saying these things about Rick, which is not 100% wrong, but like, he shouldn't say to Rick's face, oh, you're doing the best you can, blah, 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 and then say behind his back to Andrea, let's go, because Rick doesn't know what to do, and he's getting people killed left, right, and centre, and putting us all in danger. So when's the next time he's going to put us in danger again? Like, just be honest, Dale. Be honest. If this was a reality TV show, I'd be voting him off right the fuck now. So yeah, still enjoying it, of course. Right, I know I keep saying this about every volume, but wow, we've got even more developments, and it was so exciting and action-packed again. I am scared that we're getting all the best stuff now, and we're flying through it, and later on, I don't know. I genuinely don't know what to expect, but we got some really great things happen in this volume that I alluded to in the previous volume by accident. I could see some things going a certain way, which is great. I feel like, again, if I hadn't seen the TV show, I would be even more surprised. But I feel like, yeah, the previous volumes have set some things up, and my baby boy's just started lying down next to me. I love you. So, like, for example, when I mentioned Dale, oh my god, what happened to Dale? When I mentioned the whole look at the flowers, Lizzie thing, okay, so the twin boys that Dale and Andrea have been looking after, we start off this volume with one of them killing the other, and it's, oh my god, it's heart-wrenching again. It's awful, absolutely awful. And what's even more surprising, though, is that they debate whether or not to kill, the person who killed his brother, and they put him in one of the trucks, in one of the vans, and Carl sneaks in and kills him. I wasn't expecting that at all. Oh my gosh, I gasped. I gasped. And I don't know if maybe it would have been more impactful to have not seen Carl go in the van and do it, because nobody knows who it was. And to have that element of mystery in it would have been, I don't know, maybe made this volume just that slightly little bit better, even though it doesn't need to be any better, quite honestly. I thought it was really good. Because at the very end of the volume, that's when Carl admits to Rick that he's the one who killed Ben. So I feel like there would have been a lot more impact with the ending had we not known that Carl done it when he did it. I digress. We do end up getting Dale. He gets bitten, but he doesn't tell anyone, and I absolutely love the way that this reveals. So there are people who are also watching them, and we don't know who they are, we don't see them, but Andrea has a feeling about it, and then one night Dale is outside, and he gets attacked and taken away. The group try to find him. Oh, hang on, before that as well, we meet Gabriel. The person who has a church and he still has all of his faith. And I remember him, again, from the TV show. So it was really cool to meet him too. And he leads them to a church, and yeah, by church. But anyway, I'm all over the place with this one. So yeah, Dale has been taken and they're all trying to find him and they can't find him. So they go to the church, and that's where Gabriel, tells them, or at least I think he just tells Rick actually, that at the start of the outbreak, he let people die outside the church. He didn't let anybody in because he was worried that he wouldn't have enough to survive food-wise and stuff. So he had locked them all out and heard them all die, essentially, which is awful and absolutely awful. At the same time, we see Dale, and Dale is with the people who have taken him, and it's only a very small group, but they're eating him. They're cannibals, and I I eat that shit up. I'm terrified of cannibals, just like I'm terrified of zombies. They're some of my most feared things in horror, and cannibals honestly do make me scared because they're just people, you know? Just like zombies are pretty much just people eating other people. In that, honestly, oh my god, like, I'm terrified of that sort of stuff. So it was really scary. And then Dale starts laughing, and then he says, I got bitten, I'm tainted meat. And I'm just like, that's hilarious. Dale getting the last laugh there. And, you know, as much as I don't really like Dale all that much, and I had my problems with him because, you know, he was a bit of a shit stirrer. At this point, I was like, okay, this is a great way to go and to kind of bring them down with you as you're going down. But that's kind of not what really happens here, because they end up, like, they are called the Hunters. They end up leaving Dale at the church and attacking the survivors to scare them. And so Dale tells them that they're dealing with cannibals, that they were in a neighborhood nearby, and so they go out looking for him. It's Rick, Michonne, Andrea, Abraham, and Gabriel leads them. So they go and find the Hunters, and I love the way that they go about going after them as well, because when they've left Dale and they shoot Glenn, Rick is like, don't they know they're fucking with the wrong people? Love that. I love that from the TV show as well. And season 4, I think it was the season 4 finale. Love that. So they go out and find them, which I thought it probably was a little bit too easy to find them, but, you know, they were in walking distance, so I guess I can't look into it that much. But yeah, Rick ends up going there. Well, it looks like he's alone, and the Hunters are like, oh, you're very brave to come here, aren't you? But then Rick's like, Andrea, that man, his ear or something, and then Andrea shoots his ear off, and then shoots off, I think his name is Chris, the main guy, Chris, shoots off his finger, and she's just like such a good shot. Like, she's amazing in a fight, and she is just like, she's got his back. Abraham comes out of nowhere, and then they end up pretty much torturing and mutilating the Hunters, which, you know, Rick at the end as well, he's like, I'm haunted by it. I can't believe we did that. And it's just like, how far gone are they, you know? And Rick's done something so mortifying, just like what Michonne did to the governor. And, you know, these people do deserve it. But, like, what they did was, like, very psychotic as well in how they went about it. So it's definitely something that, you know, we should worry about the survivors, and if they are too far gone, how far they're going, and if they're going to go even further. It's very scary, but very interesting to read about. There wasn't a dull moment in this volume, really, so I'm going to give this one an 8 again. I feel like 8 means, like, it's one of the best volumes. I don't think any of these volumes are very perfect, though. There's always something that, like, drags it down a little bit for me, or, like, stops me from giving it a perfect 10. But I do think it's one of the most exciting ones, especially when we have the stuff with the twins, Dale getting kidnapped, the Hunters, cannibals, Gabriel getting introduced, and all of this and that and the other. It's so interesting and so good. And I do love the fact that we had that admission from Carl at the very end that he is the one who killed Ben. But yeah, I took a photo of the panel that I absolutely love. Like, one of my favourite moments of The Walking Dead so far, when Rick says, motherfuckers, they're going to feel pretty stupid when they find out they're fucking with the wrong people. Love it. And also the whole Dale laughing and saying, I'm tainted meat, I'm tainted meat. It's just, it was so good. It was so good. I'm happy that the Walking Dead comic series has been so good so far, but I'm also scared that this will crash and burn relatively soon. I don't know why I think that. I think it's because I have been burned by series before where they always reach a point where I either get sick of it or it just gets worse in quality, it gets bled too dry. I don't know. I'm worried that's going to happen. It might not happen. I mean, I'm now volume 12 out of 32, so who knows, maybe it keeps it up the entire way through. I doubt it, but I'm sure I'm going to find out, I think. But I am keeping hopeful that we keep this up. There isn't a great deal to talk about with volume 12 because I thought, and the same with the TV show when we get to the storyline, but when we get to Alexandria, I don't know, I'm just not really taken by the entire plot of it. I'm not too sure why either, because it's a fine enough plot and there's nothing like outwardly terrible about it, but it's at that point in the TV show where I start to lose interest. And I feel the same happening with this volume. We saw fine. I think it's about a week after the previous volume, and Rick, for some reason, waited a whole week to ask Carl why he shot and killed Ben. And Carl was like, it had to be done and nobody else would do it. And he's, you know, observing all the adults in this situation, his dad, what he has to do in order to keep the group safe. And he knows that it was a decision that he kind of had to take on himself. And we can't really say that was a bad decision or not, because we don't know what would have happened if Ben had have survived, if he would have killed again. You know, these are the risks that you have to take. And with Carl being so young, it's a huge decision that he had to make. So that was all interesting, fine and well. And then we get introduced to Aaron, who just comes out of nowhere. It reminded me exactly of how Gabriel introduced himself in the previous volume. And I hope we don't have this as a recurring thing, where in order for a new plot to happen or for the plot to progress, a totally new character has to come into it out of nowhere and be like, hey, he has a new storyline. You know, I don't want that to continue to happen, because we had that with Gabriel. He tells them about the church, they go to the church. Gabriel, I think, was weaved into it, I don't know if that's the right word, more naturally than Aaron was. Like, Aaron literally just appears out of nowhere, says, hey, I'm going to take you guys to this great new community. We need more numbers and strength and stuff, and you can trust me and stuff like that. It's like, yeah, okay. I get Aaron's purpose though, because he does scout people out and recruit them, which in hindsight, in a world like this, it sounds a little bit sketchy. And especially with what the characters have gone through so far, you know, you can't trust anyone. So it's interesting to see the way that they each react to it. And I feel like they have a totally justified reason for not trusting Aaron to begin with. And even by the end of the volume, I don't think they fully trust the Alexandrians or Aaron or anyone really. So little things do happen on the way to Alexandria, but nothing that really stood out. You know, they do respond to a flare from the Alexandrian crew, and Aaron goes to help them. Stuff like that, you know, things that were a little bit mundane at this point in the story. And they do end up getting to Alexandria. We have Douglas. Douglas is the one who controls Alexandria. He's the one who runs it. He gets Rick to be the new constable, Andrea to be the lookout. He's integrating the survivors into Alexandria with job roles, and like, this is what you can contribute to our society, this is what you can do for us, and you know, we have this safe place for you to stay in. They have hot showers. Everything seems to be perfect in Alexandria, and that's the point. I know that's the point of the storyline. It's that they've come across a place where they can kind of revert back to being the people they were before the outbreak, and it's supposed to make them have a taste of what life used to be like, and that they can possibly have it again. But obviously we do have little bits of doubt throughout the volume. We have characters voice their doubts. Carl is having a hard time adjusting, and it's like, what's the point? Because at the end of the day, they're just going to have to run away from it again. And even Andrea says something about, I hope that we're not too soft when it comes time to leave. And it's things like that where it's just like, yeah, like, these are interesting things to look at. Like, will they ever be able to go back to normal, even if the outbreak ended, even if all the zombies had died? Would they be able to go back to the way they were before? And that's totally Alexandria's point, and I see it and I appreciate it. I'm not the biggest fan of the whole storyline in general. So for volume 12, I'm going to give it 5 out of 10. I just think it slows down far too quickly and far too much. And again, I don't really like the way that Aaron was introduced, because it just felt like a Deus Ex Machina or something, and it wasn't all that entertaining. I am interested to see what happens at Alexandria, see how it's changed from the TV show. And it was the Alexandria part of it that I think was the last full arc that I saw before I called it quits. And it's already feeling so different to how it was in the TV show too. So I'm already a bit lost in what's happening. It's almost like I don't want these characters to have a normal life. I kind of do. There's a part of me that's like, I want them to find safety and be safe in a place for more than just, you know, one volume or two. You know, I want them to be happy. I want them to be safe. But it gets boring quite quickly, and I kind of want the characters to go through so much, which sounds like I'm, you know, a horrible bitch at the minute, but it makes it more interesting when they're dealing with a lot of stuff. And I think especially having volume 11, where a lot of really bad stuff happened, a lot of shit went down, to then volume 12, where literally not a whole lot happened in the grand scheme of things, just that they get to a new place. And that's absolutely fine. But I don't know, I guess it just seemed a little bit too easy, and now they're in this picture perfect place, and it's not fully captured my attention right now. It's losing me a little bit. But I'm keeping an open mind. I'm not trying to let my preconceived judgments on the TV show affect how I'm reading the comics. I'm going to try and go in with an open mind to the next volume, and however many volumes it takes in Alexandria. I don't really trust a lot of people. I don't really trust Douglas all that much, and he did hit on Andrea, which was a bit weird. But other than that, they seem fine, and I'm just waiting for it to crush and burn. Volume 13, I would say, is pretty much on par with the previous volume. Again, I'm just not really digging this Alexandria storyline. However, we are starting to see a lot of crack show in Alexandria. So, you know, things are heating up again a little bit. And I am finding certain parts of it interesting. There's somebody called Davidson who nobody is really giving you a whole clear picture of what he is and what he's done. But Davidson apparently is somebody who messed things up and became too much of a leader beforehand and made things go to shit. And Douglas, who is running the place now, reveals that he murdered him. And obviously that's like quite sinister and quite scary. But again, I'm not really feeling it. We also have Glenn and Heath. Heath is an Alexandrian survivor. They are going out getting supplies. They are runners. And they come across a huge horde of zombies on one of their runs to get supplies for the pharmacy. And it definitely comes back at the end of it. I can see where the next volume is probably going to take this storyline, since, you know, there are loud noises coming from Alexandria at the minute, and this herd seems to have heard everything. So that should be entertaining moving forward. The majority of this volume really was Rick noticing that a guy called Peter is abusing his wife and child. And Rick sees this, he thinks that there's something going on, so he tries to intervene, but things don't really go as planned. Rick ends up losing his temper in front of everyone and beats him, but that only makes Rick look bad in front of everyone, and it's kind of a sobering moment for him when he sees everybody looking at him, and even Michonne is like, what the fuck, mate, you know? It's a really heartbreaking moment for him to see, like, oh my gosh, have I actually lost the plot? But you've got to love Rick's instincts, because obviously this guy is bad news. Pete ends up getting his revenge and takes a knife to Rick while Rick is amongst everyone else. Pete ends up slashing the throat of Regina in front of everyone, and Rick knocks Pete down, and Douglas tells Rick to kill Pete, and Rick does it, no questions asked. So definitely lots of crack shown in Alexandria. It's not the perfect white picket fence place that they once thought it was. There are definitely things brewing underneath the surface. There are things on the outside that are trying to come in. There was a random group of survivors as well trying to get into Alexandria, and they threaten Rick. They threaten to just force their way inside. But obviously Rick and the gang are very well equipped at handling nuisances like that, and so they take down this group very easily. But in doing so, it has attracted the attention of a lot of walkers outside. So they will be heading towards Alexandria, definitely for sure, but they don't by the end of this volume. Instead, we have Douglas tell Rick that he should be in charge, and it looks like Douglas is walking away. I don't know where Douglas is going. Douglas is saying that they don't need him. It seems like Rick is in charge now. Is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? We still have that struggle of Rick, like, should I be a leader? Should I not? The pressure is too much for him, but he has to make really bad decisions that he alone is only able to do. And it's just not looking good. It's not looking good at the minute, which I'm very thankful for, because I don't want to stay at Alexandria too much longer. I just don't like the place. I really don't. I'm not unsettled by it. It's not scaring me or anything like that. And I don't think it has the same kind of charm or character as the prison, almost. So I'll probably give this volume a 5 out of 10 again. I was thinking, do I prefer it over the previous volume, which I also give a 5? But they're probably on par for me. Obviously, the stuff towards the end was exciting, but it felt very domestic drama and not enough of what I love about The Walking Dead, you know? So I didn't have a whole lot to say about that volume, actually. I just don't have very many thoughts about it. So, onwards and upwards. Volume 14 was back on track for me. I remember this plot point from the TV show. I think it was middle of season 6, when Alexandria gets overwhelmed by the zombies and they start pouring in. And I remember very clearly, I can't remember if her name was Jessie in the TV show, but I remember she was played by, oh, I forgot the actress's name. Is it Evan Rachel Wood? No, it's not. I'm trying to think Alexandra. Something like that. Alexandria, someone. I'll put it on the screen when I find out. I remember when they are walking outside, Rick is leading the group, they're all holding hands, and they get overwhelmed. They're covered in guts and things to try and pass the zombies, because that's worked before a couple of times. And then they just get overwhelmed, and Jessie ends up getting killed. And I remember that part from the show, and she is still holding on to Colin, she won't let go. And I can't remember in the show if Rick cuts off her arm, but he cuts off her arm in this, or her hand even, and she starts just whacking on it to get her to let go of Colin. It's just so awful. But you know, I live for these kinds of moments in The Walking Dead. So bad, but so good. But yeah, I did feel a little bit sorry for Jessie and her son getting devoured right in front of them, you know, after trying to escape. If they had just kept where they were, they would have been fine. Again, another decision by Rick that I don't think he's gonna feel any guilt or remorse about in the future. I feel like he's probably already over it. Especially at the end of the volume, he's like, oh, but there's so much hope now. For the first time ever, there is hope. And I don't think he's going to feel remorse for what he's done. I might be wrong. But the most shocking thing for me was that Carl ends up getting shot, like, in the head or, like, his face. I don't know how, but yeah, like, his eye was missing. Like, this part of his face was missing. And I was like, shit. I don't think anything that drastic happened to Carl. I know Carl wears an eye patch in the TV show after a while, and I can't remember how Carl got that in the TV show, so this was a surprise for me. And just the way it looks, the way it's illustrated, is I just don't understand how he survives it. Yeah, it's very brutal and gruesome. So I really enjoyed how chaotic this all went. I really enjoyed the scene where Glenn and Heath and Spencer and somebody else, I can't remember the four. No, I think it might just been the three of them actually. They went across the roof with a rope to reach Andrea, who's in the tower, and they're trying to help her. I like that scene. The rope snaps, Spencer falls down, but they pull him back up, so that was a very tense scene. Paul Morgan as well got bit, and they cut off his arm to stop the infection, but looks like it was too late, or he just died of blood loss. I'm not 100% sure, but him and Michonne have had this relationship for a little while, and he was starting to finally feel not guilty for living. There was actually a really good quote by Michonne, and one thing I haven't mentioned too much of so far is just how good the dialogue is in this. It's so good. Okay, so not Morgan who says this, but it's Michonne. She says to Morgan when he's reminiscing about his wife and son being dead, she says, but they're dead and we're not. We're alive, so we live. Can we just go by that rule? And it's simple but effective, you know? It's, yes, that's right. Like, they're the ones who are living, so let's live. However, of course, Morgan is dead by the end of the volume, so it doesn't help. But yeah, they shouldn't have to stop living or anything, and I feel like Rick also took that to heart. I mean, not that he heard this conversation, but that's kind of theme in this volume, is kind of moving on. We have Rick not responding to Laurie on the phone. I think it was this volume anyway, it might be the one before. Not going to the phone where he's been speaking to Laurie, and he's slept with Jesse, and now Jesse's also dead. So Michonne and Rick have both slept with people who then die in this volume. So that's a little funny, but also kind of bad. I should be ashamed. Jesse and his son's death was brutal. I feel so bad about that. And I feel bad that Morgan's dead now as well. And all in all, I enjoyed the chaos. I always enjoy the chaos. I'm going to give this one an 8 out of 10. I seem to give the volumes that have a lot of death, a lot of action, a lot of gross stuff, a high rating, and it seems like 8 is the top. I definitely do think I'm giving different volumes a 9 after all of this is said and done. But I think this one's definitely an 8. It was good. It was very good. I really enjoyed it. Just when I was thinking Alexandria was getting boring, although Rick does say at the end that they can still live there. I absolutely loved how they, well, Rick, you know, thinking that Carl is probably dying and he needs to fight these walkers to keep them away from him. He just goes for it. He is surrounded wall to wall with walkers and he just cuts them down. And then other people join in, other survivors join in, and they just take them down. And they're like, okay, if one person can, you know, kill 10, then that's them pretty much cleared, because there are still quite a number of survivors who can help. And they do. They just continue going and thrashing and killing these walkers left, right, and center, and it's incredible. It's so cool to see. It's sometimes a little hard to see. I feel like sometimes the illustrations are a little bit too chaotic that I can't really tell what's going on 100%. But it was a powerful moment to see them just go, you know what, sick of this, let's just cut them down. And I loved that. I thought it was really good. So yeah, I think a solid 8 out of 10 is really good for this volume and made me excited about Alexandria again. I don't know, we'll see if I still like it. I thought this was probably the end of Alexandria. I can't remember how it panned out in the TV show, but I've got 2 volumes left in this compendium and I'm so excited to see what is coming. After volume 14, volume 15 is a lot quieter. A whole lot doesn't happen in volume 15. It's definitely a lot of talk, a lot of reflection, a lot of trying to rebuild after the events of volume 14. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but a lot of it did come across as very repetitive and I wasn't the biggest fan of it. I do see the need for slower arcs and slower storylines. I really do, especially the volumes that, you know, you need that breathing space so that the survivors can kind of recuperate and move on and try and recover from what just happened. I totally get that. It doesn't need to be action all the time. But just a lot of the stuff, a lot of the dialogue felt very repetitive. there's still a whole lot of doubt with Rick being, in control and his grief, which I know they're surrounded by death. It's hard because I get it thematically, but as a reader, I'm not finding that part of it interesting anymore. I'm definitely losing interest the more I read this Alexandria storyline. And it's weird because, again, I did really enjoy the previous volume because a lot of chaos ensued. And I don't want to be that kind of reader who only enjoys the volumes where a lot of chaos happens. Just to round off what this volume is about, because I seem to be recapping a whole lot. But yeah, the whole infiltration of the zombies in Alexandria happened. They're currently cleaning it up. And Col is in a coma. He hasn't woken up since being shot. And Rick's really worried about him and is worried that he may be brain dead and he might just not come back at all. Col does eventually wake up though, but he doesn't quite remember some things, so Rick has to tell Col again that his mum died, which is sad, and Col doesn't seem to be upset about it. And this is one of the big themes about volume 15 is how Col doesn't seem to be emotional, or Rick at least thinks that he's too far gone, and that's a concern he tells to Andrea. And he has a little cry about it, and it was a really nice scene actually between Rick and Andrea of Rick being vulnerable and crying and just opening his heart up, because he doesn't do a whole lot of that either, especially now that Col, yeah, he's done things and he's a kid and Rick knows that, and it looks like things aren't looking too good for him, and yeah, he's just worried about his son. So it was nice to have that moment. And when Col does eventually wake up and he's up and about and it looks like things are okay, Rick says, Col, you can feel things and it's not a weakness to be sad. And that's like a beautiful message, of course, and it's a nice thing that Rick does and says to his son. So I like that fine, I do. Story of volume 15 is that some of the Alexandria survivors push back against Rick, and a couple of them even say that they're going to kill him, and they do have Glenn at gunpoint at one point, and it leads to Rick having to give this big speech about community and being together and fighting to survive together, and just that they need to trust them. And and again, that's absolutely fine, it's fine. I'm just, oh, I don't know, I feel like I'm just complaining where I totally say that it's absolutely fine and normal, but yeah, I don't know, it's not my favorite of the Walking Dead volumes, or when they like really do slow it down and say things that I feel like have already been said a few times. It's so late and I'm so tired, but I want to finish volume 16 tonight. I only have this little bit to go, so I will get it done. Rounding out volume 50, I genuinely have nothing else to say about it. So I'm gonna give this one 5 out of 10. It's not terrible. It's very, very average, which is why it's getting the 5 rating. And it's a shame after coming after such a high stakes volume. But again, I know not all of them can be like that, but I like what I like, okay? And we do actually end the volume with Rick and Andrea kissing. So we have that relationship starting to blossom between them two. And also, actually, Maggie is starting to annoy me as well. I mean, I totally get it. She is scared, but she has been so useless this entire time. I definitely prefer the TV show Maggie. She's done fuck all. She begged Rick not to let Glenn go out looking for stuff, and she's just constantly like trying to get away from everyone else. In a way, I say it because yeah, there's always seems to be danger where they are, but they're not going to do any better by themselves. What Maggie's suggesting that Glenn and Sophia and her go off on their own, it's, come on, you have a really good thing here in Alexandria, and yes, of course, like having some of the Alexandrians push back and be dangerous toward them, I guess, is a bit scary, but breaking off, it's just all Maggie seems to do is push back and push back and push back without actually doing anything herself. A little bit of a hot take there, but yeah, I'm not really liking Maggie. I hope she gets better. Volume 16 is the halfway point of the series, so I do hope that she gets better soon because she's getting on my nerves. I know what's coming next. Oh. We're getting to the point where I kind of left it off with the TV show. There's not everything that's happened being the exact way that I remember, but there is definitely something coming. There's definitely something coming, and I think if you're watching this right now, you know exactly what's coming. Volume 16. So again, not a whole lot happened, but we did get a huge development. We had a guy called Jesus. He comes across the group. The group are extremely low on resources and food at Alexandria, and it's going to become a huge problem. So, a small group goes out and looks to go a bit further to find food. So we have Michonne and Abraham, they go out, and that's when they meet Jesus. And there is this kerfuffle. I wasn't too sure what to think of him at first because I don't remember him from the TV show. And I don't know if I met him at this point in the TV show. I think so, probably, I don't know. Because he's part of the Hilltop. And I don't think I ever saw the Hilltop in the TV show. I do know it comes in the TV show, but I don't think I ever reached that point. Because it seems like the timeline of it doesn't quite match up with the comic series. I think things were changed around, so not 100% sure. Rick is very untrusting of Jesus, and for good reason, honestly, after what happened at the prison, after things that happened in Alexandria as well, what happened with those cannibals. Very hard to trust anyone. Better to be wary of the strangers who come before you than trust them too quickly and lose your life. So I totally get Rick's hesitation to trust. And it does turn out that Jesus is telling the truth. There is a place called Hilltop with about 200 people in, and they are just looking to trade. They want to be able to trade and have these relationships with other communities so that they can build a stronger community and foundation so that they can survive. So that's all they really want. So Rick, Michonne, and Glenn and Andrea, and Carl as well. Carl snuck onto the van. They go to Hilltop to see if it's real. And when they get there, it is. And this is where things get interesting because a name crops up, and that name is Negan. That name is Negan. I know you know it's important because I only really watched, I think it was like 2 episodes with him. I mean, I don't know what to think of him as a character. I just know what he did in the TV show, and I hate him for it. But the thing I hate the most, though, this is one of the reasons why I stopped watching The Walking Dead, was the cliffhanger. I hated that they made it a cliffhanger. I hated how they did it all. That's an editing thing, I think. It's the showrunner thing. It's the scriptwriter thing. It's not really the show to blame, per se, or the story to blame, per se, or Negan as a character, per se. It was the way that we were given that cliffhanger and the 4 cliffhangers that led to that moment as well. It just really annoyed me so much that it was just, in my eyes, rather unforgivable, and it pissed me off so much I stopped watching. And I'll get back to it someday. And I don't think we'll have that problem with the comic series, so I'm not going to carry those issues I have with the TV show to this. This is where we are really going to start to differ, and I'm going to go into completely unknown territory and have my own genuine 100% thoughts and feelings without comparing it to the TV show. Although we will still need to get to, the next volume, which is when I think we meet Negan. We'll still get to that volume. I'll still kind of compare it to where I left the show, and then after that, totally brand new, I promise. But Negan is mentioned a couple of times, and it's so ominous, and even if I didn't know what I know now, I would still have felt that fear, that undercurrent of fear, just from his name alone. He has been, well, he kind of has a little bit of a deal with Hilltop. Him and his gang called the Saviors, they take half of what the Hilltop do, like food, resources they get and stuff like that. And it's a really shit deal because Negan and his crew terrorizes them essentially, and there's somebody called Crystal as well who they have kidnapped, but they think that she might be dead anyway, but that might be important, that might come back, I don't know. But it was very interesting to get that, and yeah, I'm scared. I'm really scared about this next volume now, and you know why. Oh my gosh, I feel like I could just stop here, just stop the read now with finishing Compendium 2, but I'm going to continue. Not a whole lot else to say about this volume at all. We had, Rick kind of rejects Andrea because he doesn't want her to die and the people he cares about dies, but then at the end of the volume, he kisses her on the cheek, so there's some progress there. Are they going to become a thing? I don't know. We also leave this volume with another big speech by Rick about, this is the future, we're going to be so happy here, it's all going to be fine, and we all know it's not. We know it's not, and Rick keeps making these speeches. I'm starting to get tired of his speeches, quite honestly, and he is just, I get it because he's trying to instill hope and keep hold of that last shred of humanity and stuff, but I'm just like, we don't need speeches so often from him. I don't know if it's a writer thing. I don't know if is Robert Kirkman still writing this. I don't know if he's just ran out of things to make Rick say and do, that he's just making him kind of repeat himself with these grand speeches about you being safe and being excited for the future and hopeful for the future and stuff like that. Because now Rick has also agreed with Hilltop that they will take care of the Negan problem, although Rick hasn't exactly told the rest of the group this yet or got them to agree to it. So that's going to be interesting to see the next volume. It's like 2:30 a.m. right now. I should be asleep. I'm going to be going to bed scared. I don't know if I can. Before the next volume. It'll be the first thing I read tomorrow, and why am I doing it to myself? I don't know. Volume 16, I'm going to give a 6 out of 10. I think it was slightly better than the previous volume, just because I feel like we got somewhere with the story. I am scared about the future. It had tension as well, which was probably unintentional. No, I think it was intentional by the writer, because I know Negan and I'm scared to meet Negan. So obviously that's just like my preconceived thoughts on that. But I do think it was still quite ominous and scary the way that he was mentioned and how everyone's pretty much scared of him. Yeah, I'm scared. I'm so scared. Compendium 3, and this feels bigger than the previous 2 volumes. Holy crap. If you look at this, that's volume 2 on top. Volume 3 looks like it's a whole volume extra. It's huge. And I struggled to read this all day today. I was going to just do 4 volumes in a day, but I ended up reading 8. Oops. I wish there were page numbers, but there's not. You know what? This is the first time I've actually teared up while reading a volume, even though I knew what was coming. And I still... it ripped my heart out. I mean, there have been like other really traumatic and brutal deaths in The Walking Dead, but with volume 17, something so pivotal happens that I knew it was bloody coming, and it still got me. God damn it. So in volume 17, I've been dreading this volume so much. In volume 17, we actually have 2 deaths, and I don't know why I was surprised by the first death, considering in the season 7 premiere, Abraham and Glenn both die in that episode. So I knew Glenn's death was coming, but I didn't realise Abraham would die in this volume 2. And he dies a totally different way, by the way. I didn't expect it. I do remember the moment from the show, but like from a different character. I'm sure it was just a random character this happened to. But as Abraham and Eugene are out, because Eugene has been reading a phone book to see if there are any places nearby that would have equipment for him to make bullets and things like that, him and Abraham go outside and do this, that, and the other. Oh, okay, hang on, right. I've kind of skipped ahead. A little bit before that, as the gang are coming back from Hilltop, they actually run into Negan's men and they say, "We are Negan. Negan speaks through us," and things like that. But, you know, Rick and the team just kind of slaughter them, and they leave one of them alive and tells them to go back to Negan and tell him to go fuck himself, essentially. These people come back. They see Abraham and Eugene out and about on this little scavenger hunt for Eugene, and Abraham's talking about Rosita because, you know, he's been sleeping with Holly and Rosita's been upset about it. And as he's talking, an arrow just flies through his head and he's still talking. He's just talking as if it's normal and nothing's happened. And oh my gosh, I was really like, you know, I was actually quite upset because Abraham was kind of like one of my favourite characters. Just like his introduction was just so good, and I loved his banter with other characters. And even though I didn't like what he did to Rosita, I did still like him as a character, and I thought he was funny. And when I realised that, okay, he's gonna die right now, I was heartbroken by it, honestly, because I was like, it's been a little while since we had like the main character death, like a main character death, you know. And I wouldn't have considered like the people who died in volume 14, other than Morgan, to be like a main character. And even Morgan then, actually, Morgan wasn't really a main character. I feel like he had a lot more to do in the TV show than he did in the comic book series. He felt a little bit underutilized in the comics. And I don't think there was another major death in volume 14. I can't remember. It's not in this compendium, so I don't know why I'm looking. I mean, obviously there was like Jessie and her son, but I wouldn't have considered their main. Abraham was like the first time in a while that I've seen a main character die, and I was like, oh, you know what, I've spent this much time with these characters now that it actually hurts more when they die. And it hurt, you know, previously. I mean, it did still hurt a little bit when Dale died. I still didn't like him as a character, but like it still hurt a little. And same with like the people from the prison. But I feel like with the people from the prison as well, it had been one compendium, it had been 8 volumes. So it wasn't really, like, I wasn't as attached as I have been to, like, say, Abraham, who's now been in it for a little while. Like, I just feel so accustomed to everyone at this point now. That happened and I was heartbroken. They have a funeral for him. So Rick splits the team up. He keeps Alexandria to keep an eye out on things, and then takes a good few people to Hilltop to talk to them about what to do about Negan, to try and get more intel on him, try and get their strength up and stuff like that. But on the road, on the way to Hilltop, they are cut off by Negan's men, and Negan comes. This is the first time we meet Negan. What a villain introduction as well. Seriously, I feel like even better than the governor. Honestly, like, Negan's introduction was... Oh, like, I had chills. Like, even if I didn't know what was coming, I had chills. The way he carried himself, the way he sort of owned everything. He just seemed to be in control of everything. And it was such a sobering moment for me as well, because Rick has been so adamant that this is the world now and everything's going to be okay. This is the new world order. We're going to, sort out our food, and the zombies aren't even a threat anymore, and we're doing really well now. And Rick is in control, so everything's in control. But then we meet Negan, who is the total antithesis of Rick, but he has more control, he has more power. And it's just so sobering to say that. And I was scared. I was bloody scared. Like, I knew I was going, but I was still bloody scared. The way they just get rounded up and they're on their knees. Like, our main characters are on their knees. We're in volume 17. So we're halfway through the series. I thought, oh, they've finally kind of got a grip of the world and their place in it. But here come these saviors, and with Negan, who think they own everything, and it's like, part of me is like, fucking kill them all, but another part of me is like, be careful, be smart. But obviously it's like such a hard situation, and of course Negan does his eeny meeny miny mo thing, and oh god, like, I actually genuinely teared up. I had a really heavy throat. And if I spoke earlier as I was reading this, I probably would have cried. If I was filming my reaction and I had to speak right after it, I probably would have cried. But fortunately, I feel okay now. I do feel okay now. I finished the volume. So the Glenn death happened like in the middle of the volume, and I'm a little bit more better now. But just the scene, the fact that Maggie and Sophia have to see that happen, and it just tore my heart out. And then even like right after it as well, when Negan leaves them and Maggie starts beating up Rick, and then Carl points a gun at Maggie, and then Sophia attacks Carl. It's like, what's happening to my survivors? What's happening to my main characters? They're tearing each other apart, essentially. All that stability that we had just before this has kind of really shattered, and I love it. Honestly, I do. I'm glad, because as I said with the whole Alexandria storyline, I thought things were maybe a bit too smooth, and it shouldn't be. It's a zombie apocalypse. Of course I want them to be happy and stuff, but my entertainment comes from things being shaken up, and Negan shakes everything up, and now I'm scared and excited about what they're going to do about it. I found the governor now in hindsight to be such a sloppy villain that he doesn't really compare to Negan, and Negan's only been in it for one chapter. Honestly, like, the governor, he just seems so disorganized in comparison to Negan. And I mean, don't get me wrong, the governor's still iconic and made a lot of shit go down. I'm loving Negan as a villain, and it's weird because when I turned off from the TV show, it was at this point. And it wasn't because of Negan, it was mainly the showrunners essentially doing what they did with the show. So I'm very hopeful and open-minded about Negan now, and excited to see what comes next with The Walking Dead. Which actually is funny, because I think that's what the next volume is called, What Comes Next. Oh, but also, during all of this, Alexandria was attacked, but Andrea and everyone in Alexandria managed to hold them back. They got rid of some of the men, and they retreated. And they managed to catch one of Negan's men, and Rick ends up letting him go at the end. We also have a great moment with Michonne, actually, because she's like, if I had have done things differently with the governor, would what happened at the prison still have happened? And that's like a good question to have. Like, the paths that we take, the choices we make, was it actually a good decision or not, you know? So with Rick having already fought against Negan and being so resilient, I mean, I don't want him to roll over and give Negan everything he wants, of course not, but he has to be smart about it. So the whole retaliation obviously hasn't worked because they paid the price with Glenn's life. So now they have this man tied up, and Rick has let him go because he doesn't want to piss them off any further, and kind of also sent a message. But what I liked about the very, very end of this volume, Rick has let the man go, and he's getting Jesus to follow him and to stay back, far enough back so that he doesn't get caught. so that they can see where Negan is and kind of get a grasp on what's going to happen. So I don't know if this decision will end up biting Rick in the ass, but only time will tell. And I don't envy Rick for his position at all. And it was nice as well to see Andrea sort of stand up to him too and question Rick's decisions. You know, sometimes Rick does need to be questioned and grilled about the decisions he's making. So it doesn't seem like everyone's just following him blindly. It's more of a joint thing. And honestly, I am loving so many of these characters at the moment. But yeah, I really enjoyed volume 17. I'm going to give it a 9. I'm actually going to give it a 9. It's like one of my favourite ones so far. I'm definitely going to raise volumes 1, 3, and 8 to a 9 as well, because I feel like I love them on par, and then at the end I'll probably try and rank them so I know which one I prefer over each other. But yeah, this is a good solid 9. It was almost perfect. It was the first time I got really emotional, and I'm just so invested. Yes, yes, yes. I'm honestly loving this storyline. I really am. And seeing Negan as, well, he definitely comes across as like more reasonable, but also more terrifying in that he isn't psychotic. He doesn't have a screw loose. He's not on a bloody rampage and stuff, but he is dangerous. He's so... I don't know the right way to explain Negan. He's a master manipulator for one, and yet he comes across as so... I don't know, like, yeah, reasonable is probably like the best word for it. Even though he did kill Glenn, I will never forgive him for that. And he obviously is a little unhinged. Yeah, so they do end up going to Alexandria, Negan's group, or at least some of Negan's group. We do see a lot more of Negan and his whereabouts and like what he does and his settlement and stuff. So we do see all of that a little bit later on. But they do get to Alexandria. It does seem like there might be some resistance, but, you know, Rick lets them in and they have this barter thing set up with them so that they will leave Alexandria alone. And it does seem like, you know, if they just continue doing this, then everything will be fine. But obviously it's not right. It's not the best way of going about, you know, giving them supplies. It's not the right way to live, essentially. So obviously we can't keep this up. But, you know, Rick is doing what he thinks is best for now. So that's good. Jesus is following the guy who, you know, Rick let go from Negan's group. But Jesus does get found out, but Jesus does escape. However, at the same time, after Negan's group leaves Alexandria, Carl has snuck into Negan's van thing. And honestly, Carl is a sneaky little devil. He's very slippery. How nobody saw him do this is beyond me. But he did the same thing with Rick a few volumes back. It might be in the last volume. And it just proves that Carl is, well, he's great at sneaking around. Stealth, I think he's going to be really good at if given the chance. And we do have a little moment later on in the volume of Carl being a little too over his head and realizing that with him missing an eye, that he does have blind spots and that does affect his ability to defend himself. So I feel like he still has a lot of learning to do and a lot of adjusting to do with his condition. But before all of that, he snuck into Negan's van. I was totally floored by this. I was like, fuck, this is not good. This is not good. And then Carl, as soon as they get to, you know, Negan's settlement where the saviors live and stuff, he just comes out guns ablaze and kills about 6 of Negan's men. And Negan actually really respects him for it and is so almost chill about it. He does have this like undercurrent of, you know, judgment, and you just don't know what he's going to do. There's a lot of unpredictability there with Negan. And with Carl, yeah, he brings him into the settlement. He shows him around a little bit. We see what Negan's life is like. He has like 6 wives, and what happens when people betray him. And it's really gross, the fact that he puts an eye into people's faces. And oh, I don't know if that happens in the TV show, but I don't think I ever want to see that happen. But we say that he doesn't have a whole lot of fighters, a whole lot of men. There's a lot of women and children and just normal people at this settlement too. So it's feeling very Woodbury-esque in a way. Again, I do think that Negan is coming across as a lot more of a formidable foe for our gang, and it's such a good volume exploring that, because I was on the edge of my seat the entire time wondering what he's going to do to Carl for, well, killing his men. And we say Negan, he doesn't let people get away with things, you know. That's going to come back to bite Carl in the ass, I'm sure. But at the moment, Negan has given Carl back to Rick, and he says he can be reasonable, you know, just follow the guidelines, follow the rules. But I just think we just can't take everything he says at face value. There's got to be something that he's going to do. He's taken stock of what people are doing to him, and in Negan's head, things are turning. Things are turning. I do want to mention Lucille as well. Negan's bat that he used to bash Glenn's head in is such a weird one because the way Negan talks about it, it's almost like it's his own living thing. Like it's actually alive. And the way he talks about it is so sinister. You know, like saying things to Carl like, oh, Lucille loves being sung to, second only to bashing people's brains and stuff like that. It's so odd. It's so odd and it is unhinged. I'm just scared about this whole dynamic. Negan and Lucille, whew, what a great team, am I right? And by great, I mean terrifying. Terrifyingly effective at really raising the stakes in this Alexandria world that we are living in with the survivors. But that's not all. Jesus does go back to Rick and tells him he knows where they live. And he also tells him about Ezekiel. I never met Ezekiel in the TV show. I saw promotional stills. I saw a tiger. I saw there was going to be a tiger, and that's so epic and so awesome. So I love the fact that we have met Ezekiel now, and he has the kingdom, which sounds so fancy. It really does. It sound so fancy. And there is hope there as well, because Ezekiel is against Negan, and one of Negan's men as well, the one who gets the eye into the face in this volume, he is also, well, seemingly betraying Negan by being there and wants, you know, Negan's head on a silver platter. But Rick is not as trusting and he doesn't quite fully believe it. He finds it suspicious, which of course you should not take him at face value. You need to question his motives. And even if he does say, you know, like that was his wife that is now Negan's wife and everything's changed and he wants to fight against Negan, you have to look at the bigger picture and be like, okay, but is it a safe option to trust him? And even I'm doubting who comes along if I trust them or not, because every single new character who comes into it, I immediately cast suspicion over them. And I feel like this world has done such a good job at doing that. Fight the dead but fear the living, you know? That's the tagline. I think it was season 3 of The Walking Dead that really stuck with me all this time. And I love that tagline. It's so true. And I feel like we've gotten to the point now where, yeah, I'm kind of more scared of the living than the dead. But the dead are still formidable foes. We did have that close call with Carl, and I'm glad that we aren't just brushing them aside. They are still very much prevalent, very much present. So, you know, that's all still fine and well. I really enjoyed it. I will give this volume a 7 out of 10. It's not incredibly epic by any means, but I really appreciate the storylines that we did cover in this. You know, Carl being with Negan, how scary that was, and what we learn about Negan, the future, meeting Ezekiel, and getting Jesus part of the group as well. I do quite like him as a character. He feels very efficient, and I hope he never ever, you know, betrays us. But I'm so suspicious about every new character now. The only people I ever really trust are the survivors we started out with. And even then, like, it's slim pickings now, because Maggie now lives at Hilltop, and we have, well, Andrea, Michonne. Oh, and I'm still really liking Eugene and Rosita. I felt so bad for them after they lost Abraham, considering they were a threesome, you know, a good unit before all of this when we met them. And it is sad to see how they've had to cope without Abraham. But seeing them really thrive a little bit in this as well. Eugene is becoming really useful with the whole weapon side of things and the making of bullets and finding this place that have things already made where they can like do more bullets. I don't know essentially the ins and outs of this bullet making thing, but Eugene does, and that's very great because he feels useful, and I love that. I love that he's really incorporating himself into this team and making use out of it, and Rosita is there to help as well. She's never not been helpful, so I really enjoy that too. I hope nothing bad ever happens to them. Michonne did have a little bit of a weird story in this. She does try and get with Heath, but Heath rejects her, and Michonne herself is like a little bit taken back about her own actions as well. She's kind of like, she doesn't know she can be the same anymore, and it was just a little bit of a weird one. I don't know why that was part of it. I don't think it really added much to Michonne's character, but yeah, I wasn't the biggest fan of that. But other than that, the rest of the volume was pretty solid. Love seeing our characters so much. The next volume apparently is called March to War. March to War sounds rather scary and epic. I feel so lazy because all I've been doing today is sit in my pajamas with my dressing gown. I've had like 3 coffees so far today as well. And I finished volume 19. I really am still enjoying this story. I don't think there's like much else that I can genuinely say about it. Just that I really am enjoying how there are different communities, and one of them being Rick's, that are against this common enemy. And we do still have all of the walkers, like they've always been the enemy and stuff. The next volume is called All Out War, and it just feels like it's going to be a lot more intense and action-packed and organized than the assault on the prison by the governor, for instance. And I'm here for it. I really am. I'm so excited to see what happens next. This is a very strong volume again. I think I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. It wasn't as maybe action-packed as, say, volume 17 or anything like that, but it's putting all of the building blocks together and all the pieces together. I can see this jigsaw becoming fully formed before I even know it. And it's just so interesting to see all the different reactions to Negan and how this storyline is unfolding. I will say though that Rick's decision making, I'm questioning every single volume. He does something that's rather stupid in this, and he does get lucky, but luck runs out. I shook my head at Rick in this volume, honestly. So the main story in this is that we do start off with like Jesus going to Hilltop and speaking to Maggie about the plan to take Negan down. And he also tells somebody else, I think his name was Cal. Cal is one of the shooters in Hilltop that Jesus trusted, but Cal is on his way to tell the Saviors the plan, essentially, and betray them, but not in exactly a malicious way, just to say like, oh, everything's fine right now, we're keeping the peace. If you do this, then everything's just going to fall apart around us, you know? But going to Negan and telling him their plan, what does he think is going to happen? Something similar happened a few volumes back when somebody does betray them. My mind's a bit foggy now. I'm just taking in so much with these volumes, and there's so much happening, so many characters, so many plot points, that it's hard to keep track of every single thing that's happened so far. Oh, I think it was, what was his name? Martinez, when he goes to tell the governor about, or he may or may not be telling the governor about the prison and the whereabouts of it, and like how that ended for Martinez. So we get the same kind of thing happening here, except Cal doesn't get killed. Jesus just talks him down and stops him from doing it. But like, seriously, when you're in that position, Cal, like, how stupid can you be? You're going into the Lion's Den to tell them, oh, they're going to betray you. What do you think is going to happen? Do you think everyone's going to come out of it looking rosy and cheerful? Like, you think there's going to be no blood spilled just because you told them of their plan? Like, I don't get that. Like, some characters are stupid. And it's the same as Spencer. So Spencer also, when Negan comes to Alexandria with some of his crew, and they say, oh, Rick's out getting supplies and stuff, Spencer goes up to Negan and tells him, look, Rick shouldn't be the leader, I should, and kind of implying that Negan should take him down. So I do love Negan's response to that. He tells him, you have no guts, slices him open so all of his guts fall out. He's like, oh, I was wrong, there they are. You know, it's like so callous and so evil, but like, I kind of, it's hard to pick a side with that because Spencer was against Rick and we're on Rick's team. And so to see Negan take down Spencer like that, it was just strange. But also Negan, he is a bit of a funny man, he is a bit of a clown. But I mean, not that I ever laugh at what he says, but he just breaks the tension a lot. Even though he creates the tension, he breaks it too at the same time, which is such an odd thing. And I feel like that's why I'm really enjoying Negan as well, because I still can't get a clear read on him, and I love his presence. I mean, I want him to get killed, absolutely. I want him taken down and beaten, but I'm really enjoying his presence so much. He's just bringing something else to this, and I don't want him taken down too easily. So I enjoy that, and I enjoy that whole thing. But then what really got me was that when Rick comes and gives them half of the supplies and Negan's on his way, that Rick thinks it's a good idea to try and kill them there and then. And obviously that doesn't pan out. Negan's smarter than that. They do have guns and they do have other people around making sure that they aren't going to be, you know, betrayed and stuff. So like, it was such a close call. Andrea almost died. And I'm just like, Rick, why? Like, it was just... I still don't understand it, but like a lot of the times he does think too quickly and he gets too hot-headed and he thinks he sees an opportunity and takes it without thinking all the way through. So like, I totally see why people doubt him sometimes and his decision making, because I do as well. And he really was lucky to get out of that situation without any deaths on his side, but it's still... I just wish he had been a lot smarter about that. And now Negan's going to be prepared for whatever they're going to bring. It's not going to be pretty. I think it's going to be a bloodbath. I really do, especially since All Out War. That sounds ominous. That sounds terrifying. So I'm a little bit disappointed in Rick and his decision making in this one. It was so close. I genuinely thought we would have lost someone. but fortunately we didn't. But yeah, that's pretty much the volume, I guess. It's all so connected. It's kind of hard to stop talking about a storyline because... Oh, that's the door. Sorry, it was a postman. So I kind of lost my train of thought now. Just, yeah, it's hard to talk about a storyline in parts, especially since volumes cut off storylines and stuff. It's just... Yeah, I'm just enjoying my time. I'm still enjoying my time. We're 19 volumes in, about going to the 20th, and we're well over halfway, and... Sorry, I'm out of breath. Whew. Not as fit as I used to be. And it's still holding up very strongly, so I'm really happy with The Walking Dead at the minute. Still pretty good. I was so worried for a bit there, but you know what? I'm having this love-hate relationship with Rick's decisions, because I feel like he made some good decisions in this one, I'm not gonna lie. I love the fact that the author, Rob Kirkman, didn't clue us in on what Rick's plan was, and it started out really well. And the whole getting lots of people to the place where Negan is and all of the saviors and stuff, and making such a ruckus that all of the walkers will, you know, come down and surround them all. Like, that was a really good plan. Holly didn't quite fully grasp it, and even though Rick was going to hand himself over essentially because he was the only person he knew that Negan wouldn't kill because he wants Rick alive, so Holly does kind of step in for him, which was very heroic, you know. I do appreciate that. I don't think I've mentioned her very often. She does end up dying, which is a shame, but her scene as well with Negan and this other guy in Negan's place was very harrowing as well, because she's about to be raped, but Negan stops it. He actually stops it, and his number one rule is like, you do not rape women or rape in general. And it was... I'm not saying he's a good guy or anything, but that's a damn good rule. So he does have some semblance of humanity left in him, and he's not 100% a monster. He's definitely like 99% a monster, but that 1% is still there. And it's good. It makes him a lot more real, a lot more alive, and definitely one of the most complex villains so far. Like, the more volumes we have with Negan, the more I love his character for what it is, you know, as an evil person. I don't love him, I want him to die, but I love his character. I think Robert Kirkman is doing a fantastic job at writing him. So yeah, it does look like in this all-out war that Rick's team is winning because they are surrounded, and Rick's team managed to make it back. Holly's only the main big casualty. They do go to different outposts, and oh, my heart torn too. King Ezekiel, he loses his tiger. His tiger gets killed, and oh, it was such a heart-wrenching scene because it seemed like she kind of sacrificed herself in order for, you know, Ezekiel to get away. So that was really, really touching and heartbreaking. And Ezekiel does lose a few men at this outpost, but at this point, even though there are casualties, and Rick even says, look, there's going to be casualties, it's war, you know, you can't avoid it, it's still heart-wrenching whenever something like that happens. And fortunately, we still haven't lost a big player since Glenn, I would say, but it's damn bloody close, and I am still worried about where this all-out war is going, because we ended the volume with Negan coming to Alexandria and throwing grenades and things and getting the place literally blown up to smithereens. There's lots of damage happened. I don't think they can really recover Alexandria after this attack, but who knows, who knows. We have lost a couple of people as well, actually. We lost, I think his name was Eric. He was Aaron's partner, Aaron's boyfriend, fiance. I don't know if they're married or not, but they are like the last two gay people in the world. I love when Aaron mentioned that. It is cool to see some kind of LGBTQ plus representation in this, even as sparse as it is. But, you know, Aaron and Eric was like quite a really cute couple. Even though we didn't even see a whole lot of them, it was still cute to have them there. But yeah, that was very sad. And seeing Aaron really, you know, want to fight still, even though he's just lost someone he loves, he's like, right, let's do this, you know. He's very admirable. And we also, well, when Negan comes to Alexandria, he has Holly with a bag over her head and lets her go into the compound where Alexandria is. And when the doctor takes off the mask thing, she gets bitten, and then Heath ends up losing a leg. So there are like huge things happening, but I'm still holding out hope that my main characters will make it out of this. So all in all, I'd probably give this one a 7 out of 10 again. There were some really good tense scenes. Not wholly my favourite, but I see everything slotting into place. And yeah, the war is, you know, building and building and building, and it looks like anybody could go at any minute. It doesn't look like either side is winning per se, even though we end the volume with Negan thinking he's winning because there's so much smoke in Alexandria, it's in flames, and yeah, but I wouldn't celebrate a victory just yet, Negan. There were some other things. I took photos of things on my phone. I think it had something to do with some funny moments. It might have been a funny moment that Negan said, I'll try and find my phone and work out what it was. I also enjoyed Michonne and Ezekiel. They're forming a relationship as well. And that's interesting. I think that's all for this volume. I'm trying to keep my thoughts as concise as possible because this vlog is probably 2-3 hours long. So let's get back into this All Out War Part 2. All Out War Part 2. This is the first two-parter volume. Let's get this war finished. If it even finishes, I don't even know. The second part to All Out War, it was fine. It was fine. It wasn't as epic as I was kind of hoping. And I guess not all explosive concepts have to be explosive. We already had, say, Made to Suffer. We already had Volume 14. I can't remember half of these names anymore. We already had some really big confrontations and things. So obviously not all of them can be as epic of a confrontation as this one. I was a little bit, not let down exactly, but I was expecting a little bit more. The way that Negan is talked down by Rick, it's pretty much talk, you know, and he just started to say things in Rick's point of view. I mean, I wasn't expecting Rick to pull out a knife and slash Negan in the throat. It was fine, honestly. So before all of this, we had Negan talking to his guys and making them infect their own weapons so that when they hit one of the other survivors, their enemies, that cut will get infected and they will die, so they don't have to go hard on trying to kill them. The infection from the zombie blood and guts and whatever's on their weapons will do the work for them, which is a good idea actually. I quite like that idea. Pretty sure there might already be times when blood has been something that's entered the survivors' systems and hasn't turned them. Am I thinking about the TV show? I can't remember now. But it's a good concept. It was quite scary the way that unfolded. And it was a scary moment as well because I thought that maybe Rick got infected with the arrow and stuff. And it was Dwight who was playing the Negan survivors and being on Rick's team secretly. You know, he was double crossing Negan and he was the one who shot the arrow. And for a second I did think that maybe he was betraying them. But turns out the arrow was clean and Rick is fine. But it did mean that a couple of other people did end up dying from it. So again, we still have those casualties, so this war still felt very real and very high stakes, so it was all good. Yeah, Negan thinks he's won because he's infected Rick. They retreat a little bit and then come back the next day and demand a new leader and demand them to comply, but Rick appears out of nowhere and he's like, haha, thought you got me. But no, he ends up talking Negan down and says, this world is amazing, let's stop fighting one another, we could do so much, we can build so much together, you know, and Negan starts to see it in his perspective and then gets his throat slashed. But he is alive by the end of the volume. Rick doesn't want to kill him, he wants to put him in jail. He wants to now establish this new world order that have, you know, these rules where you shouldn't really kill. Rick changes his mind so much. He really does. He really does change his mind so much. But I totally get it. I understand. Like, he definitely sees this as definitely a new world. He's done it a few times. But he sees, you know, the hilltop, Alexandria, and the kingdom and stuff coming together. There's so many people now. And this could work out for all of them if they just work together. And they work against the dead rather than killing each other and making the dead's job that much easier, you know? So it definitely feels, out of all the times Rick has had hope and made a speech, this is definitely the one where I feel myself as well that this could be the one, you know, and this civilization, this new society that they're trying to build and create, hopefully to make it better than the one before. I totally see why Rick doesn't want to kill Negan and just wants to lock him up forever. I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think Negan will be locked up forever. I think something will happen and Negan will get his revenge. So I think the safest option is just to kill him. Just kill him. Publicly execute him, as they've mentioned. He did take our Glenn away. He took our Glenn away, and for that it's unforgivable. And he's caused the deaths of so many other people, so yeah, I don't know if locking him up is going to do any good. But it'll be interesting to see now, because I feel like this whole war with Negan has come to an end. So whatever happens next, it will be interesting to see how Negan plays into that, and if he is to ever be trusted again, if he even appears again, I don't know, he might just be locked up forever and that's it. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what the next story is, because as I mentioned with Alexandria as well, as soon as the survivors start to really settle, I started to get a little bit bored. So something needs to happen now. If Negan's the big bad that they've taken down, something needs to happen now, moving forward, that I don't know, will make it exciting, you know? Because I always want The Walking Dead to be exciting. It's fine for them to settle and be safe, but it's The Walking Dead. I want death and excitement. That's just what I want from it. I know it's not feasible all the time, but that's what I want. But yeah, all in all, it was a fine volume. I can't remember if I said, but I'm giving it a 7 out of 10. It's not amazing, but not bad by any means. Yeah, 7's a good rating. Oh, I also want to mention as well, Eugene. Eugene's a bit of a badass in this. He ends up escaping with the help of some of the people at the Saviors, and some of the Saviors want to go with them. And they're in the car and they're surrounded. And Eugene has this plan of escaping, and he sees one of the Saviors with a sniper rifle watching, and he manages to escape out of the car surrounded by walkers and make it to the sniper and kill him. And it was just so badass. Eugene was so incredible in that moment. I really love that moment. And Eugene is really, in fact, the past few volumes, Eugene has been so good. And oh, I'm just loving him at the minute. I also found it hilarious when Negan said, "My dick is so hot right now I could crack steel. If I could, I would wrap it in barbed wire and call it Lucille too." It's just like, that's hilarious. Like, honestly, Negan does come out with some crackers, and he's just funny. But in a really bad way as well. I shouldn't be laughing. Volume 22 was okay. It was good. It was nice to see. I think there was a bit of a time jump actually. It didn't tell you how long of a time jump. But Maggie's had a baby. Did I even mention Maggie was pregnant? Can't remember. Can't remember what I tell you guys anymore. But Maggie was pregnant. She's had her kid. And the kid is a little bit grown up. I think it's not exactly a toddler, but young, very young. And Carl looks a bit older as well. Rick looks older. Alexandria's thriving. So is everywhere. Everywhere's thriving. It's like the perfect community. And a few new people are out and about. And you can see like how they're working this community, because there's a few people trying to guide herds away and making it safer for the people at the places that they have as their community. And these new people as well, they get taken to Alexandria, they meet Rick. They don't quite fully trust him to begin with, but that doesn't matter. Interested to see if there's anything that happens with these characters. But yeah, we have as well at the start of this volume, we have Carl talking to Negan, who is in prison. Yes, he's still in prison, and he definitely looks older. He's got longer hair, and I mean, he's kind of friends with Carl, kind of not. Carl still wants to kill him, but it's interesting to see that Rick is still holding out his end and keeping it civilized. And at the same time, there was a moment when Rick hits out at a person, a guard who was supposed to be monitoring a certain road, like 5 miles of road, and Carl and Rick were attacked, and Rick attacks this person and says, "You should have been looking after this place. I will be telling Ezekiel you're superior," and stuff like that. So that part was a little bit like, oh, has Rick become a bit of a tyrannical leader? But I mean, people seem to love and adore him. He is literally idolized when he gets to Hilltop, because Carl wants to move to Hilltop to become a blacksmith. And it's nice to see that there are actual roles within these communities and how they're doing stuff to survive and thrive. And it's weird to see them do it so well. And that's why I think something's definitely going to happen that's going to make them, you know, not have this place anymore. And that scares me a little bit, but also I'm looking forward to it. So I'm going to give this volume a 5 out of 10. Not that it was bad or anything, it definitely wasn't. But yeah, again, just back to average territory. The calm after the whole all-out war storyline. So yeah, we were going to have this calm. And to say exactly what this civilization that Rick was saying and promising to Negan at the end of the last volume before he slit his throat. Nice to see them thrive, honestly. What else? Oh, but we do have the introduction of, I think, maybe a new enemy. I don't know how they're going to be interacting with the survivors, but I think they're called the Whisperers. Well, it's really, really scary actually, the fact that they sort of dress up as the dead and they can talk, they can fight. It looked to begin with actually that the dead could start talking and that they could carry knives and stuff, so that was interesting. I was like, oh, have the dead evolved? But like, how? Because they're deteriorating, you know, they're dying. But it was interesting concept. And then it turns out that they're just wearing like masks and stuff, and that's like really fucked up and scary. It's really scary actually. Like, what is their purpose? Like, what are they doing? Like, are they just doing that to survive? Which is fine, honestly. But if they're gonna start attacking our survivors, then what the fuck, man? They need to leave them alone. You know, they're thriving. They don't need this shit. I don't think we need a whole battle between living people again. We've had that a few times and we've seen how it turns out, and it never turns out well. So, like, just keep fighting the dead. You don't need to fight each other, but obviously a lot of people don't understand that. So it'll be interesting to see what the Whisperers do, because I have no idea what they're going to do and how they fit into the story. So it was good introduction to them. I liked it. And it was an alright volume, really. Not much else to say about it, I don't think. Just that also it's nice to see Cole having grown up, and it's quite touching as well that Rick never wanted Cole to leave him, and a part of parenting is knowing when to let your child go. So seeing Rick kind of agree finally to allow Cole to live at Hilltop without him is like a huge step for Rick, and it was an emotional moment. I totally love that moment. And to see Rick himself kind of grow up as a father and to know what's best for his kid and knowing that this is exactly what Carl wants and is allowing that to happen is a huge step for Rick, honestly. I'm so proud of him. I'm proud of Carl, honestly. I'm proud of everyone. I love seeing Andrea thrive. I love seeing Maggie thrive. It's just, it's too good. And one of the new characters as well says, if it looks too good to be true, it usually is. And this is looking too good to be true at the minute. So trying to put my barriers back up because I'm like, this ain't gonna last. And yeah, it's interesting. We do need volumes like this though that slow it down and allow us to breathe before something huge happens again. But still, 5 out of 10, that is my rating. Okay, Carl is being a stupid fuck. He's being a stupid... Okay, he's gonna get someone killed. He's gonna get loads of people in trouble. But I can kind of see why. Okay, so back up. Volume 23, we had a proper introduction to the Whisperers and we got a lot more insight into who they are, what they're doing. They're not actually walkers that can talk. They are people with the walker's skin on them. And they're led by Alpha. So we meet Alpha and we also meet Lydia as well. Lydia is the daughter of Alpha, and during a kerfuffle with some of like Maggie's men, these men get attacked by the Whisperers because they are on the Whisperers kind of territory, and some of them get killed, and Lydia gets captured as well and taken to the hilltop. So Lydia is a teen, she's around about Carl's age, and there was some interesting developments with Carl in this as well. Not that I loved it 100%, or at all, quite honestly. So Lydia and Carl have sex and it made me feel very uncomfortable. I still see Carl as like a young kid, essentially. He's just far too young. And I know he's definitely a teenager now, he's grown up, but at the same time, I don't want to say that shit. And also they have sex outside, in public. Like, that was just that really weird. Even before that, Lydia is locked up and she's being interrogated by Maggie and her men. And Carl is put next door as well because he attacked a couple of boys who attacked Sophia and he protected Sophia. He almost killed them. For a second, I thought he had killed them and I was like, oh fuck, he's gonna get everyone in trouble. But no, fortunately, he didn't. He went a bit too far. He was gonna... Well, it looked like he was going to kill them, actually. But no, he managed to just maim them a bit, which caused a lot of conflict in the hilltop as well. Maggie's position in power is questioned by a lot of people, especially Gregory. Gregory, along with a few other people, agree to kill Maggie, and Gregory tries to poison Maggie, but it doesn't work. So that whole storyline was like neither here nor there, and I hate it when there's inner conflict, especially when everything is so good. Like, trying to kill Maggie or having this conflict that just didn't even need to happen. It's like, why are you trying to ruin a good thing? So yes, Lydia's been interrogated by them. She confides in Carl. Carl has been locked up a little bit, but Maggie does let him go and lets him off pretty easily. But Lydia confides in Carl and finds him, you know, a really good person to talk to, and she tells him that she's pretty scared and that she doesn't really want to go back to the Whisperers because they treat her poorly and they do things to her that I don't want to say out loud. So she doesn't want to go, and Carl really sympathizes with her and, I don't know, maybe starts having feelings for her. He does only really know her a day, so I don't know that whole situation. They do sleep together and it's Carl's first time, but still, I'm so weirded out by that whole thing. Necessary to happen to Carl, I guess, but at the same time, I don't really want to say that. I feel like Rick at the minute, like, he's still just a child to me, you know? I don't want him to grow up, but I do, but I don't. But yes, Alpha comes to Hilltop and she offers a trade, Maggie's men for her daughter, Lydia, and Maggie accepts the trade, and you know, everything's fine and well. There's been no conflict there. But it looks like Carl has now gone after Lydia in the Whisperers to save Lydia. So that's going to fuck up some shit, isn't it? All in all, I found this volume rather dull. But again, not a bad volume either. So I feel like I've bottomed out at a 5. So I think I am going to give this one just a 5 out of 10. Right smack bang in the middle. Very average. Didn't progress the plot. Didn't pull the plot backwards. It was interesting to see more of the Whisperers and Lydia and all of that. But overall, just wasn't a huge fan of the volume. And I've got nothing else to say about it. This was probably a very short review, probably the shortest volume review there is. So, what can I do? Well, fucking shit. Oh my god, the ending of this floored me. I was not expecting that shit. Call, you fucking idiot. Oh god, wow. Oh, I was so content with giving this just like 5 stars pretty much the entire way through. Like 5 out of 10. Yeah, I wasn't. I probably won't still give it like a mega high rating, even though I'm floored by the ending. I'll probably still only give this like a 7 out of 10. But that ending, shit. Shit. Oh my god. Rick has got after Carl, right? Carl left to go to save Lydia. I don't even remember anything else that happened. I've just finished this. I can't remember anything else that happened to him, but like what the main chunk of the story is. Oh, we do see Michonne again. I've been missing Michonne. Michonne's been like AWOL from the series, but she's been staying with Ezekiel in at the kingdom. She's been going out getting fish and stuff, which sounds so odd, but at the same time, you know, they have this civilization now, and it's incredible. Honestly, it is incredible that they've managed to do this. And Michonne's been off sailing, getting fish and shit like that. But yeah, so Rick visits, and there's a fair going on as well at I think it's Hilltop. I think it's the Hilltop where it's happening. Could be Alexandria. I wasn't paying that much attention, quite honestly. So when Rick finally finds out that Carl's gone, he goes after him with Andrea and Michonne and another guy who is part of them. I forget his name. They go to the Whisperers, and Alpha, there's a brief moment where she is at the Hilltop, Alexandria, wherever this fair is taking place. There's a brief moment with her talking to someone, and I was like, why the hell is she here? This is strange. This is very odd. Very suspicious, you know? But nothing really happens with that, because while Rick is with the Whisperers, Alpha comes, and it's like, oh, okay, nothing seems to be out of the ordinary, right? And Alpha talks to Rick, and there's a lot of like strange stuff that's said and a lot of awful stuff that's said, especially regarding Lydia and what Lydia has to go through regarding rape. Alpha shows Rick all of the walkers, all of the undead, the roamers or whatever they're called in this. She shows Rick all of them, and wow, she has thousands. Thousands. That panel, I don't know if I can really show it for copyright and stuff. I mean, I might just do that anyway. Oh my god, I just flicked to a page and I'm so upset. I'm so upset. Oh. These are all of the walkers that they have. All of the zombies. Oh. So after that whole thing, Alpha decides to let Lydia go. She says that she's too weak for them, but she's crying at the same time, so it looks like a really emotional, heartfelt moment between mother and daughter. The fact that the mother, Alpha, is saying these things, saying that she doesn't really care and that they have to follow the rules of nature and stuff like that, and that they're really truly animals, and, you know, nobody has names and stuff like that. Like, she's very archaic and a little bit wild in her theories, and she seems extremely unhinged in that, but she does say to Lydia, you can go with them, that's fine. But she's saying it while she's crying, so I felt a little bit sad for her at that moment. I was like, oh, you know, this is like really hard for her, because she is trying to fill this role as a leader, and it seems hard. But then Rick goes back to like Michonne and Andrea, doesn't say them, and they ride out, and Alpha mentioned something about marking a fence or something, or marking a line that they should never ever cross, so that it's like the Whisperer's land and stuff. And then they get to this fence thing, and there are heads on poles on sticks, and these heads are people that we know, including Rosita, who is fucking pregnant. Oh, not anymore though, because she's fucking dead, and it's not Eugene's. But Eugene was going to raise it himself, and kind of like a deal with like what Rick was going to do with Laurie and Judith. And now she's fucking dead. And just before that at the fair as well, she was emotional and she wanted to be by herself, so she left Eugene. And that's obviously when Alpha took her. Oh god. And then at the very last page, it's fucking Ezekiel. Ezekiel's head's on this stick as well. Oh, like there's other people as well from Hilltop. I think it's the people from Hilltop. Yeah, it's mainly the people from Hilltop. So I think the fair was in Hilltop. But oh my god, there is Olivia, Josh, somebody's brother, they don't actually say, Tammy, Luke, Erin, Ken, Amber, somebody who they don't name, Oscar, and then Rosita, it's her head, and then underneath that, it's Eugene. It's fucking Eugene. And he's got this thing that he bought for Rosita at this fair. Oh my god, it's so awful. And then the next page, I'm not showing it, it's just too nasty. Oh, and then Ezekiel. Oh, this is like torn out my fucking heart. And I did think that we were fine, we were safe. And then this happens. Carl, fucking Carl. Oh, I still like Carl. You know, I find him such an interesting character. But what he's done by going after Lydia, even though his heart was in the right place and what was happening to Lydia was not right, and I'm glad that she's out of that. But look what he's now done. Rosita, she was fucking pregnant. Oh. I'm emotional, I'm upset, I need to think on this. Yeah, I'm lost for words, I can't speak. I don't think I wrapped up that volume very well. But everything else that happened in the volume, I honestly don't give a shit about right now. Oh, they also hanged the guy who tried to kill Maggie. I've already forgotten his name. Maggie had him hanged, and she hasn't told Rick about that yet because Rick, again, doesn't want to kill anyone. Well, let's see what he says now. Let's see what he thinks about this now. Oh, also, Negan, actually, I forgot to mention as well. Negan, when he was it Olivia as well, actually? Yeah, I think it was Olivia. She'd accidentally left the thing open, the gate open, when Negan is in his cell. And, you know, Negan could have left, but he didn't. And Rick came down, saw that it was open, and like there's a conversation between him and Negan wants to build trust with Rick, and Rick doesn't want anything to do with him. He just wants to keep him locked up forever and ever. And Negan is like, look, I could have escaped, I could have done this, I could have done that, but I didn't. And yeah, he has a point. At the same time, Negan is still an awful, awful person, so I don't know what is going to happen next with him. Don't know if Rick's going to go to him for help with the Whisperers or what. But yeah, that was an interesting scene between Negan and Rick. Oh, I'm just upset. I need to go to bed. This was the last book of the day. The last book of the day, it's just after midnight. I have Ash here with me as well, probably ready to go lie down as well, aren't you, baby? Aren't you? Okay. I was after comfort and he just turned away from me. Oh, I haven't been this floored since Glenn. Oh, I just wasn't expecting it. That was awful. That was so bad. I'll calm down in the morning. I've had a night to recover. Do I feel better this morning? Absolutely bloody not. Absolutely not, I don't. I'm still heartbroken. I still feel like my heart has been pulled out of my chest still. But we soldier on. We soldier on. I finished volume 25 this morning. And it was a good volume. Again, like, there's not a single bad volume of The Walking Dead so far. And I'm loving the fact that these stories are connecting. It's just all been so good. It's just all been so good. I'm so happy that this is another good one. I'll probably give this one a 6 out of 10. This is a lot of dealing with what happened with the Whisperers, the fence thing, the pikes that all the heads are on, and the immediate aftermath as well. It's heartbreaking because the heads are zombified and they need to be put down. And obviously Michonne and Ezekiel had a relationship, and Michonne feels like she wasted so much time because she didn't spend enough time with him. You know, she was running off, gallivanting, and she didn't feel like she deserved to be happy. So there's lots of regret and remorse with Michonne, and it was so touching to see. I do feel a bit bad for Lydia as well because she didn't ask for any of it, and you know, she's kind of now somebody who everybody hates because she's associated with the Whisperers. So when they take her back to Alexandria, nobody really wants her there. And Eugene is flipping out because poor bloody Rosita and the baby gone, and Eugene is rightfully angry and pissed. And a lot of people who have lost their loved ones are angry and pissed. A couple of them attack Rick, one of them almost kills him, and then Rick pulls out his signature move, which is biting somebody in the neck and tearing out their throat. You know, Rick, that is his special move. That is his power move. If this was a video game, that is the move that you would have on Triangle for the PlayStation. So it was really interesting to see the reaction of everyone in the aftermath of this, because we have a civilization now, don't we? And Rick has this, like, don't kill kind of rule-ish. You know, he toes the line sometimes, he really does. But he doesn't want to revert back to the way things were before. And going after these Whisperers and making all hell break loose, you know, it's happened before with the governor, it's happened with Negan. He just wants to avoid all of that, so he can understand where he's coming from. But other people, they want blood. They want blood, and they are demanding revenge. And Rick I love the fact that he goes to Negan for advice. I love the interactions between them. As much as I don't like Negan, I love him as a character, but I don't like him because, he's killed people and he's a bad person. Yeah, I don't like him, but I love his dialogue. I love the way he talks with Rick. I love the fact that Rick is going to him for advice, actually. It's kind of... It's weird and funny, and I hope that this decision doesn't come back to bite Rick, especially since he's let him live. It's something that I honestly do really admire. I have mentioned this as well, but Rick's gotten older now as well. He uses a cane to walk, and he's not as fit as he used to be, so he's not in the best shape. So that's a little bit worrying, having a leader, having Rick kind of be weak almost. Not exactly weak, because he still has his fire and passion, but physically he is pretty weak. And even people say, I didn't realize Rick Grimes had become a pussy and stuff like that. Leading to the end of this where Rick tells everyone, look, we are going to fight back. We're going to do this strategically. We're going to build a military. Eugene has been making bullets and they've been saving them for a rainy day. And now it's raining. I love that moment. It was so good. So it looks like we are going to have another war with the Whisperers. I'm just really nervous about it because whenever they go to war, there's usually a good few casualties. And with them having built such an amazing place, an amazing connection, a network of places, that it could jeopardize all of that. And when you saw what the Whisperers have as well, the hordes upon hordes of zombies, I'm scared of them being unleashed, honestly. Like, they've been held back. Zombies haven't really been a problem. Like, they know how to deal with them and sort them, and they haven't really been that prevalent apart from being in tandem with the Whisperers. And they just haven't been a problem. I think we're going to get to a point where they are going to be a problem again if they fight against the Whisperers. Well, honestly, they should. They absolutely should. What they did to those innocent people and put their heads on pikes. And also, Alpha scares me a lot because Alpha, we see her briefly and somebody from the Whisperers approaches her who seems to be like quite familiar with her and friendly with her and sees her crying, and she kills him because she doesn't want anyone to see how weak she can be or like the emotions that she does have. She doesn't want anyone to say that's what she kills them in cold blood. And when somebody asks about it, she just says, oh, he challenged me. Death to anyone who challenges me. And it's like, she's something. She is something. She's a piece of work. So yeah, Lydia and Carl have also gone to Hilltop instead of Alexandria for Lydia's safety. And Carl and Lydia are like really, really close now. Like very, very close. And I hope this is something that doesn't bite Carl in the ass. I do blame him for all of this. I blame him for going after Lydia and getting Rosita and Ezekiel killed, which I know I shouldn't. I shouldn't blame him, but I kind of do. All in all, very good volume, 6 out of 10. Looking forward to the Whisperers and this apparent war that's coming. The next volume is called Call to Arms. So, looks like we are gearing up for another war. And my cats just suddenly start to fight. Wow, you heard war and you went with it. Respect. Wow. Holy motherfucking shit balls. I wasn't expecting that ending. Anyway, yeah, we are continuing the Whisperer storyline. They're gearing up for war. Rick is getting everyone to be part of this military, training them, stuff like that. The main thing about this volume is that there is a young boy called Brandon. So the guy who Rick tore the throat out of was Brandon's dad. And Brandon's mum is one of the people who had her head on a pike. So Brandon is furious. He wants Rick to pay. So his plan is to free Negan and take him to the Whisperers so that they can tell them about Rick and so that they will go to war and kill each other, essentially. But obviously Brandon didn't think that through because it's Negan we're talking about here. Negan ain't gonna be, anybody's lackey. And I wasn't expecting him to kill Brandon, quite honestly. They get to the Pike place, and Negan's like, stabs him. It's such a, oh my god, it's a terrible moment because, Brandon's upset over his mum and he's crying and he's being consoled by Negan, and Negan just stabs him. It's so cold and so awful that really I should be hating Negan right now. But god damn it, he's so funny. Not the killing Brandon or anything, but it's as soon as Negan gets to the Whisperers and he talks with Alpha and stuff, the way he just converses with people, I just find him so funny. And I'm so confused. I really want to hate Negan. I really do. I hate that he killed Glenn still, and I'm still so furious over that. And even Abraham as well had to pay the price with Negan's shitheads. But god damn it, he's so funny. just his humor, I love like dirty humor, dark humor, and Negan gives that in spades. Just the way he interacts with Alpha as well is hilarious. One of the things is when he tries to get Alpha to accept him into the Whisperers, and he's like, "Do you?" And she says, "I do. You may stand." And he says, "Is it okay that this is giving me an erection?" And she's like, "Stand." Just like he just has so many moments where it's so inappropriate, but he breaks the tension so well. Like, oh god, I want to hate him. I really do. But god damn it, that ending though. He's been, with the Whisperers for I don't know how long. Some time has passed. He's kind of earned Alpha's trust. In Alpha, she is obviously like emotional, but she's not allowed to show emotion in front of the Whisperers because then someone will challenge her and defeat her and take over as leader. So yeah, it's quite a weird way of the Whisperers. They have this really weird way of living. And Negan sees that, and especially when he stands up for a woman who's about to be raped. Like, I can totally respect Negan for speaking up for her and defending her and telling them that their ways are bullshit. Like, I love that. And at the end, Alpha is consoling in him, and yet again, we have a little bit of a betrayal on Negan's part where he cuts the head off of Alpha. And he's like, what does he say again? Something about Rick. Wait until Rick gets a look at you. I'm like, so is he on Rick's side? I can't really fully tell. I can't tell. But I absolutely fucking love the way that this unfolded. I really do. I love how he just, boom, there you go. Thank you, ma'am. I've just chopped your head off and I'm going to take it away. It's just like he works in his own way. And I love it. He doesn't tell anybody his plan. He's so sneaky and just so charismatic. God damn it, I hate him. But I don't. Damn it. I hate that I don't hate him anymore. It's... Ugh. Anyway, yeah, this is a really good volume. Again, I think overall I'm going to give it an 8. I think it's like such a strong one. I actually do prefer it to volume, I think it was 24, where it ends with a head on the peg. I'm not rating volumes based on one moment, and I feel like that volume was a little bit dull until the end. So I'm not going to give that a higher rating just because it had one epic scene. Whereas this one, I think it carried it throughout. I really enjoyed seeing... Well, also, like, how Negan's manipulation has also worked on Rick. Rick is trying to, well, almost propaganda-esque when he has silenced the Whisperers on the sides of the Alexandria walls, and he's kind of like fear-mongering them, and he's listening to Negan's advice, and he's kind of manipulating them, and he's taking that on board, like, Negan's feedback on board. And it's just so interesting. Like, it was so interesting to watch and to see how other people react. They are getting scared, the people, and somebody has accidentally shot somebody else. Not to death, but still, it's like kind of a whole thing. I also really enjoyed the fact that Michonne and Aaron go after Negan and they have a bit of a heart-to-heart. Aaron's talking about Jesus and like how much he cares for him. Not as much as Eric, who he lost a few volumes back, but he does like him a lot. And there is like a little bit of drama there, but then they are confronted by the Whisperers. There's a fight. Aaron gets stabbed. I don't know if he's actually dead. He isn't breathing when Michonne takes him back to... I think it's Alexandria or the Hilltop. I think it's Alexandria. I do love the art style and stuff in this. I think it's really well done. But sometimes I can't tell where it is because I don't think it's as detailed or as profound. And sometimes I'm a little bit confused about who's speaking. And sometimes like different characters are part of a scene and I don't know who's who half the time unless they're a main character. So I'm finding that some of it a little bit hard to follow. I don't mind the black and white thing. I think maybe it would be better for me to see it in colour. I don't know if that would help me differentiate between people. But yeah, I do know they're re-releasing all the issues in colour, so that's amazing. I don't think they've released all of them, but now I'm kind of like, well damn, now I kind of want to get them. Like, I'm loving this story so much. I probably would reread them in colour, just not anytime soon. So, I don't know, maybe I'll try and get my hands on them. I don't know. We're talking too far in advance. But yeah, I'm loving my time with this. I almost don't want to come here and update you guys. I just want to keep on reading, but I know if I do that, I'll end up getting my thoughts jumbled up on the volumes and... Yeah, because I did that with volumes 5 through 8. I just read through them all, and then when I got to talking about them, I got myself a bit confused sometimes. So yeah, we're just going to go volume by volume. But I'm just dying to just continue reading. I really am. And I don't have far to go. This is a huge compendium as well, but I've read this. I've got this much left. And this is definitely the biggest compendium yet. And it is intimidating, but because I'm enjoying it so much, I don't even care. For every single volume that goes by, I get more and more scared. I'm just like, damn, like we are, towards the end game, we are getting towards the end, and I have no idea what happens after the Whisperers. We're still knee deep in it. We are knee deep in shit right now with the Whisperers. I thought this whole war thing would kind of end in this volume, but it bloody doesn't. And for a moment, it does look like our good guys are winning, being smart as well. We had Dwight helping and leading the people who are on the front line, and Michonne's there, and Negan's there as well, and they are trying to split up the coming Whisperers who are mingled among the dead, and they're trying to, split them off, break off into different parts so that they can take down the Whisperers and the dead strategically. And it kind of works. It really does work, and it's a great plan. Honestly, I have trust, I have faith in our main characters to get through stuff like this. So it was really great to see them working together and trying to do all this and the other. It was great to see as well Negan be part of that and fight and kind of develop a little bit more trust. And it is a bit sad, but not really, because it's Lucille, but Negan gets his bat back, and it is a pretty epic moment in this. It's in the middle of all of this chaos, and he gets his bat back, and he's, fighting these Whisperers. But then the bat breaks, it just breaks, and Negan has a full-on meltdown. He breaks down, he is so overcome with emotion that the people around him think he's pathetic and stuff like that. But we do see that Negan has a lot more connection to the bat because of what it represents. And I feel like I knew this the entire time. I don't think it's kind of like a out of nowhere kind of concept. You did see this entire time just how attached Negan was to this bat, and that it would obviously represent so much more than it just being a bat. I kind of get it, it's what it represents, but you did bash Glenn's brains in with that, so I'm kind of glad Lucille's dead. But yeah, it was still a touching moment to see Negan bury the bat and kind of let go of the person who he had apparently loved, and hopes that she is in heaven and, getting her brains fucked out and stuff like that. Obviously Negan still has to make a joke of it, which, that's his character. He's a funny guy. He tries to be funny to break the tension, to make himself feel better. But, I'm still finding Negan a bit unpredictable, but it's nice to see him on the right side at the minute. What else is going on? The Whisperers also attack Hilltop, and it's kind of in ruins. It looked for a moment that Maggie was going to lose Sophia and Herschel, the baby. Did I ever mention that Maggie had a baby and she called him Herschel? Did I ever mention that? I can't remember. Maggie has a family, and it's really touching, so I was worried that she would lose that, but fortunately she didn't. Lydia is also definitely on the right side as well. I wasn't sure if she was going to betray Carl, because earlier on as well she says that she doesn't love him and he needs to kind of not care as much, and I thought that was kind of leading towards maybe a potential betrayal, but I was wrong. She does fight against the Whisperers when they arrive at Hilltop, and she fights alongside Carl and everyone, so she definitely has proven herself to be trustworthy. I do find her trustworthy, but I'm still holding judgment on a lot of things. Same with Negan, I'm keeping these characters at arm's length so that if they do betray, or when they betray, you never know, then I won't be as emotionally wrecked. So it was a very good volume, very fast paced. I would probably give this one a 7 out of 10. I really enjoyed it. I was worried for the characters. Rick is still kind of on the outskirts of things at the minute. He has this, it says he's only 38, so he's not old. I thought maybe he was a bit older than that, but he's only 38, and he is, physically a bit weak, or weaker than usual, but Andrea is trying to knock some sense into him so that he can actually, get up and do something. It's kind of weird seeing Rick not be at the front line of something, so I'm hoping we get the old Rick back. Oh, this is just a random moment as well, but Jesus is asking about Aaron as well, so there might be a little thingy between them, and Michonne is like, you're going to make so many people happy, and I'm just like, this is what I root for. I'm not the hugest fan when we focus on relationships, which I think the early days of The Walking Dead, when it only became a character's personality was a relationship, or that was what dictated them, then I wasn't the biggest fan. But now that we're so far into the Walking Dead series, when there is a relationship that blossoms, then I do back it, because they do deserve happiness, and I know that it's not their entire personality, or their entire storyline. So obviously Rick and Andrea, I don't even know if I've mentioned this, but Rick and Andrea are, it looks like they're pretty much enough. Rick mentioned something, can't remember if it was this volume or the one before, about how I think it might be the previous volume, but he did tell Andrea that he's never been happier, and he actually has never been this happy even with Laurie. And that's like a huge thing for him, a huge step forward. And it's just pretty cool to see him really attempt a life, especially post Laurie. And with Maggie as well, she doesn't want to be with anyone. Somebody does really fancy Maggie, but she is constantly keeping him at bay, and she says like she will never love anyone after Glenn. Whenever she thinks about Glenn, she's happy, so she doesn't ever want to find somebody after that, which, you know, to each their own. If that's how Maggie copes, if that's the right thing for Maggie, if that's what keeps her happy, then that's fine. And I don't mind if she does just continue on with just Sophia and Herschel, you know. It's touching between them, you know. They're a little family unit, and if that's what makes Maggie happy, then fair dues. But yeah, it was a good volume. I'm very excited about it, especially since the end is so scary. And when Rick was saying as well, because Dwight thinks that the war's over, but Rick says it's nowhere near over. There were thousands of those zombies when Rick saw them, and you can tell they're coming because they sound like an ocean. And that just, oh, that's terrifying. Like, I've got chills, I've got goosebumps. And it looks like they're heading straight for them because the Whisperers have let them all go. So those cowards are going to hide behind the dead, aren't they? They're going to make the dead finish what they've started. So I'm looking forward to seeing how this war actually finishes. It's probably my favourite war so far, actually. Because when I think about wars, I think about the Governor's War, and then I think about Negan's War, and then this war. I don't know. The Governor's War was sloppy. Negan's one, I mean, I did like All Out War. I really did like it. I just found it a little bit anticlimactic. And then the Whisperer War, it just feels like so much more is at stake than ever before. And yeah, I think I might be preferring the Whisperer War the most out of any war so far. So there's a little bit of a hot take. I didn't think this would happen, but apparently so. I'm proving myself wrong at every single corner. I can't wait for this to be over because I'm sick of being fucking emotional. Andrea's dead now. Like, I can really feel the end coming, which I'm so thankful for, because I just want to move on from this and read something very happy. But I'm also sad because it'll be over soon. And I never thought I would think this. I thought I would read the Walking Dead comic series and be grateful when it's over. I didn't realise just like how much I would actually enjoy it and fall in love with it. Especially since I've fallen out of love with the TV show, which honestly was one of my biggest loves way back in the day. And I just didn't think it would hit this hard, and it's hitting so freaking hard. Oh, as soon as I saw Andrea get bit, well, I didn't actually see her get bit, I just saw the bite mark on her neck. Oh, God, my heart stopped. My heart stopped. I was like, no, not Andrea, please not Andrea. And it just makes me think of all the possibilities they missed with Andrea on the TV show. Ugh. Anyway, really enjoyed this one again. I think I'm going to give this one an 8 out of 10. It had the emotional stakes of it. It had the like fantastic writing of like the dialogue again, especially with Andrea talking to Rick losing control but kind of regaining it, and just everything sort of crumbling down around him. We still have that huge herd of walkers, and it was so great to see Negan and Rick kind of work together. They are two sides of a coin. God, I do hate saying it, but I really do like Negan now. Oh, I hate it, but I love it. So yeah, the walls of Alexandria have come down, the herds have come in, and they're trying to get them to go away from the place, like, you know what they've been doing for the past few volumes, like diverting the herd and making them go in a certain direction. Like, that's their big defense, and it kind of sort of works, and they do start thinning down. We have Negan and Rick trapped in a house, and Negan just goes outside and kills as many as he can before he goes back inside until they thin out. And it's great to see that dynamic. It's great to see them working together, you know. So during this time as well, Eugene has managed to make a load of bullets, and he's so incredibly tired, but he does kind of get Andrea bitten because he tries to divert them away. He gets the horn from Andrea and he tries to get them away, but he gets overwhelmed and Andrea comes to save him. She didn't have to go and save him. It did seem a little bit like a suicide mission that Eugene was on. But yeah, Andrea saves him and gets bitten in the process, which I'm not trying to blame Eugene. That's not what Andrea does as well. Andrea doesn't blame him. Rick doesn't blame him. But I do a little bit, not gonna lie. I just hate seeing my favourites go. I hate seeing them die. I want there to be a happy ending. Oh, and now I just don't feel like there's going to be a happy ending. These Whisperers, man, they've fucked everything up. Carl, I still blame Carl for all of this. I'm glad Lydia's fine and safe and stuff, but look what's happened. Look what's happened because of that one decision. The scene of Andrea dying as well. She's lying in bed and, you know, Rick's tearing himself apart, he's so guilty, but Andrea's like, look, I'm dying in my bed comfortable. She never would have gotten that chance had Rick not taken charge, had Rick not made the decisions he's made. She isn't sad that, I mean, of course she's sad she's dying, but like, she's thankful for everything Rick's done to get her to this point, you know? And it's so beautiful and so heart-wrenching. And when everybody came as well to say their goodbyes to Andrea and like just say a little something to her, again, it was so heartbreaking. I'm just sad. I'm just sad. I need this to be over. I still have 4 volumes to go as well, but I need this to be over. I need to read something happy. I need to watch something happy, just anything. Oh yeah, also The Saviors, great storyline here as well. I mean, I was hating how The Saviors were going to turn against Rick and the gang. And I'm like, just stop dividing each other. But you know what? It's also very reflective of real life. Like, I realised this as well with all the wars that go on, with people turning on one another and putting their focus on things that they shouldn't be putting their focus on and tearing each other down when they should be building each other up. It's such a great commentary on real life. You know, things that are happening in the real world. And it's putting so much into perspective of how we treat one another, how we go about trying to rebuild communities and our society, and how we affect that with our own decisions and whether we want to do good or bad and stuff like that. I feel like The Walking Dead has been such a great commentary on just life. With the zombies being dead and the fight for survival, it's just been... Oh my god, I could probably do like an essay on the themes of The Walking Dead and what the dead represent and how the living fighting for life, like what that represents, you know, and the communities that we build and the relationships we establish and stuff like that. When you go deeper into The Walking Dead, it just seems that much more meaningful. So I do appreciate and get that. But anyway, I went off on a bit of a tangent there. The Saviors, led by Sherry, want nothing to do with Rick and the gang, but Sherry does attack Rick, and Rick defends himself and accidentally kills Sherry. And then when it looks like there's going to be conflict, Negan steps in and he says, hey, do you guys want to, you know, follow me, make me your leader and go back to things the way they were? Only one person bows down, and Negan's like, are you fucking stupid? Like, is that what you seriously want? You saw what life was like beforehand. We have a chance to be better and do better, and Rick's already proven that we can do better. And like that moment itself, I was like, fuck Negan, yes. It's so hard when you're rooting for a villain. Like, he's not really a villain anymore, but he was still a villain. It's so hard to root for, but it's just a testament to the writing, isn't it? That you can really kind of flip your mind on someone, still hate them for certain things, but their overall stance on Negan has just changed dramatically, and it takes a talented writer to do that. I will give Robert Kirkman credit for that. So yeah, that was a great moment as well. Negan getting the Saviors to not fight and to understand that what they have, they should be appreciative of, and they never want to go back to the way things were. Things are better now, even though we've just had this huge thing happen. Like, honestly, they need to do a whole lot to rebuild after this, but still, it's like worth rebuilding for, you know, like that's the point. Even though, like, Rick even says himself, like, how can he go on? Because there's something worth fighting for. There's always something worth fighting for, and that's just a beautiful message, an absolutely beautiful message. Oh gosh, it's just so good. I'm on now volume 29, Lines We Cross. I'm ready to be done. I'm honestly ready to be done at this point. Volume 29 felt rather short, actually, in comparison to the ones I've just read. I can't tell pages in this. This has no page numbers whatsoever, so I can't tell if something's shorter or longer, but it felt short. It felt quite short, and we're trying to rebuild after the whole attack with the Whisperers. Not really much to report on this one. It seems to be a lot about, like, Rick dealing with Andrea's death, and the kind of way that he's coping is by sleeping outside at her grave and stuff. It feels awful. We start off, like, really touchingly as well with Carl talking about Andrea and how she became his mum, and on her gravestone it has Andrea Grimes. So, like, I didn't realise she took Rick's last name, but it's so nice that she was part of this family and that she meant so much to them. It makes the loss even that much harder. Honestly, it's still tearing me apart. Other than that, it's really just like a whole lot of rebuilding stuff. Dwight seems to be a bit of a problem. He's opposing Rick quite a bit. I'm just not the biggest fan of him at the minute. I can kind of see where he's coming from. But the main thing for me in this one was Negan again. And honestly, without Negan right now, I just don't think I'd be enjoying it as much. Like, he's coping on his own. You know, Rick has let him just leave, and and so Negan is on his own and he's trying to fend for himself. And Maggie isn't comfortable with that, so she goes and hunts him down and tracks him. And there is an exchange between Negan and Maggie about Glenn and trying to move on from that. And I feel like this was something that we've needed since Negan took Glenn's life. And it's something that I feel like I also needed as a reader, because obviously I'm still torn up about it. I still don't forgive Negan for what he did. If we'd followed Negan this entire time and we saw Glenn as an outsider, like, would we have cared as much? Probably not. Negan is the hero of his own story, and he feels like he did what he needed to do to protect himself, protect his people, carry on, and all of the main characters have done that. Rick's done that, Maggie's done that, Michonne, Andrea, everyone's done things to protect their own. Things that a lot of people aren't proud of. Like, we even started the volume with Carl saying about when he killed, it was either Ben or Billy, I can't remember, when he killed a kid while he was a kid, you know, he did what he thought he needed to do. And people have to live with this kind of stuff all the time. And that's what Maggie does to Negan. She tells him, this is what you have to live with now. You know, she has the opportunity to kill him. And Negan even says, like, I deserve this, kill me. But she doesn't do it. And now we have Negan. Negan gets his own replacement of Lucille. He finds a new baseball bat. He puts barbed wire around it. But at the end of the volume, he burns it. And that is definitely a way of him moving forward and moving on from his past. His past with Lucille. Having closure there with his previous wife and the loss of her. Lots of development with characters. Like, really touching, developing character moments. But other than that, I can't even really tell you a whole lot of what I thought about it. Oh, also, actually, no, big thing. Eugene's going out to find the person he's been talked to on the radio called Stephanie. And I don't even think I've mentioned that storyline at all, but Eugene has been talking to someone on the radio and he hasn't told anyone. Sadik did overhear this and he tells Rick, and Rick, he tries to establish a relationship between them and Stephanie. So he sets Eugene out to find her along with Michonne and a couple of the other characters. Magna and Yumiko, they came in a good few volumes back. I haven't really mentioned them because they haven't been that important, but they are together, they're a couple. And there was a really cute scene where Yumiko just shouts out, we're gay, and like Michonne's like, okay, you know, it's just like, it doesn't really matter anymore. And it's like society doesn't have these labels anymore, you know, you're either living or dead. Yeah, so Eugene and Michonne and everyone have gone miles and miles and miles further than they've ever gone before to this city, and it's completely empty, it's completely dead. But they come across Princess, and Princess, she's quite an interesting character. She seems quite funny, and I do like her. She seems a little bit kooky as well, so I don't know if they have to like keep an eye on her. I don't know, like, again, I'm reserving judgment because I am not outwardly trusting with everyone we meet straight away, but she seems pretty cool, she seems pretty funny, so I like her introduction a lot. And they're still going on this mission to find Stephanie and her people, because there's apparently a community there that they can establish a relationship with. So they're doing all of this. So I like that. I like that storyline, fair enough. I also like that Jesus and Aaron, oh god, I love them. They are an amazing couple. I love them so much. They are out on their own as well. They've gone out. I can't really remember why, but they do tell Rick, and they are out and about. They come across the Whisperers. They kill Beta, and I love that. I love that we finally got closure with that, because he did sort of disappear after he let the Walkers do his dirty work for him. So I like that we got closure on that, and Aaron was the one to take him down. I was really scared for Jesus and Aaron as well. I thought they were going to die, and I would not have survived that if they did. I still need happiness in this world. It's somewhere. I really enjoyed their little storyline. I enjoyed a lot of it. I really did. Like, all the little storylines, all the pieces, I really did still enjoy. I'll still only give it like a 6 out of 10 because, again, like, not a whole great deal happened, but we did have pivotal moments, especially with Negan and Maggie, and that closure that Maggie needed in order to move on from Glenn. We want Maggie to be happy, we want her to thrive, and it looks like she's going to be able to do that now that she has some closure. Oh, also, it seems like there might be some kind of tension between Lydia and Sophia, especially since Sophia says that she misses Carl, and they did used to be boyfriend and girlfriend, like, back in the prison. You know, they haven't been the same since, but they have been through a lot. But Sophia just wants her friend back, and Lydia sees them talking, and it seems like she might not be taken too well to that. It feels like petty drama. It feels like petty drama, but obviously things are different. Lydia's never really grown up in this kind of environment. She doesn't really know what's going on and how to respond. So I don't know if Lydia's going to act irrationally to what she thinks maybe that Sophia's a threat, and she doesn't really get the whole friendship thing. Wow, there are a lot of birds outside. Okay, so I've just had a whole bunch of birds just sit on the roof opposite the house, and they always do that. The entire street, they pay no attention to the roofs in the entire street, but the exact house opposite on the roof, they just a whole bunch of birds just sit there and then they start talking to one another. I don't know if it's some kind of conspiracy. It actually really creeps me out. I'm going to show you. Can you see them? They just sit on the roof opposite. Like, look at that. It's just a whole army of them. Oh, and now they're gone. I think it's because they've been caught. They saw me watching them. They're like, shit, our cover's blown, and they've just gone off. But they do it every single day. Every single day. They watch the house. They're keeping an eye on me. I'm telling you, they're keeping an eye on me. And after reading The Walking Dead, I'm paranoid. I have to be careful. You just never know. They could be there to kill. Volume 30 was a fine volume, honestly. I loved seeing more of the Commonwealth, which is like this really bustling, huge community where they have established like civilization again, and they have class systems and all of that. And there's a really good conversation about whether or not these class systems work, if it's right. And I don't think it's right. I definitely don't think it's right. So a lot of red flags with the Commonwealth. And it's cool to see as well because it's almost like it's back to normal almost, you know, like they have football games, they have bakeries and stuff like that. So while it has its red flags, it seems to be the safest place on earth and a way of establishing the old. There's mention of a new world order and this is like the way things should be and stuff. So obviously stuff like that, it's been a conversation that we've had countless times before in The Walking Dead about leadership and people and community and all of that. So we've only got like 2 volumes left, so it'll be interesting to see what we make of this place, of what's happening here. Other than that, one of the best things about this volume is the fact that Michonne got to reunite with her daughter. I mean, I don't care how ridiculous and I guess how unbelievable it kind of is. I mean, kind of not, you know, because, you know, when you hear about people's stories, especially Elodie's story, who is Michonne's daughter, she has been through a lot as well, and she lost her sister, Michonne's other daughter, and it makes sense that a lot of people would find this place, especially since there's apparently 50,000 people there. I'm sure that's what they said. About 50,000 people there. And they have their own like military thing and stuff. Like it's almost like everything is back to the way it was before the zombie outbreak. What was really touching though was the fact that Michonne got to, you know, see her daughter again. And when you saw her photo on the Wall of the Lost, which is a billboard kind of thing where a lot of people, the survivors there, have put on the board hoping that maybe their lost loved ones will be found. You know, seeing Michonne's photo on there from her lawyer days as well, which is like so crazy to see. It was like, oh my god, this is huge, this is amazing. And I want Michonne to be happy so much. I mean, it breaks my heart that she gave Eugene her sword and, you know, said, take this to Rick and he'll know to trust them. That was heartbreaking because I'm like, oh, it's the end of an era, isn't it? It's like, this is coming to the end and I don't want that, but I kind of do. It seems like the Commonwealth is the answer to their prayers, but also in a way there are still things about it that give me huge red flags. And it's never that easy though, is it? It's never that easy. And obviously some conflict has to happen for there to be 2 more volumes, I guess. But oh my gosh, my heart's pitter-pattering the fact that we have the end coming soon. But yeah, so we meet Pamela Milton. She is the, well, governor kind of thing. She kind of leads there. She is the one. She doesn't seem like an evil person so far. She does a couple of questionable things, but I feel like after meeting so many leaders in The Walking Dead, she seems to be somebody who's quite sane-ish, and she doesn't seem to be outwardly trying to kill anyone, so that's good. That's a good thing. She does have a really bratty son though. I think his name was Sebastian. Little shit. Honestly, I don't like him. But it was really interesting to see how his behaviour was like, because we do, again, have this class system in the Commonwealth. And to see, like, his privilege and to see stuff like that come back and the way he treats people, it's questionable. And it'll be interesting to see what we make of this system. And Rick also questions that, because Pamela does go to Alexandria to meet Rick, and Rick questions that. He does. And if you had a certain job before the zombie outbreak, then in the Commonwealth you would just get that job again, and people can work up the ladder and stuff. A lot of the times it seems a little bit unfair to a lot of people as well if they didn't have the best job in the days pre the pandemic. It is odd. And nothing can be perfect, can it? It was absolutely fine. Then I'm probably just going to give this volume like 5 out of 10. I feel like the best thing about it was the Michonne and Elodie reunion. Melted my heart. It was so nice to finally be happy after so long. And this is what I want. I want people to be happy. But yeah, it was very slow moving. good developments, but slow moving in terms of plot. And yeah, it was fine. It was absolutely fine. No bad things to say about it really, just other than it just wasn't my favourite of mine. The penultimate volume was okay. Magna said it best with volumes like this. She says, you know how this goes. The quiet times when things are peaceful, that's all just killing time between the horror. I feel like we're building towards something, but with there only being one volume left, and it's a big volume as well. It's probably the biggest volume ever. They probably supersized it with it being the final Walking Dead volume. This whole Commonwealth storyline is honestly fine, absolutely fine. I feel like it's a natural way to maybe end the series, having this incredible place that seems quite safe, although it does look rotten in the inside, because a few characters mentioned this. It's probably rotten to the core. The leadership as well, Pamela, she's not a good leader. She seems to be obsessed with power, and a lot of people are kind of rebelling against her. There are some riots that happen, and Rick and Dwight say that this isn't exactly perfect. They say that people are kind of oppressed in this place as well, and they kind of feel the need to put it upon themselves to free people. Although Dwight definitely more so. Rick takes a little bit more convincing. But I was a little bit shocked by the end of this because Rick ends up killing Dwight in front of Pamela. I guess maybe to earn her trust. And Michonne is the one who kind of sold them out, actually. Michonne is the one who told Pamela to come meet with them, to talk with them, because of this whole, well, almost Rick about to betray her kind of thing, which seems so out of character for Michonne, quite honestly. Like, she's changed a lot since coming to the Commonwealth, and I'm not a huge fan of that. I totally get it, though. She is with her daughter, and she sees something good at this place, and she says she wants to defend the good of this place. She definitely thinks there is something there worth fighting for to, you know, make it even better, and that's why she's so passionate about the Commonwealth, which is honestly fine. I totally understand it, but the fact that she does end up kind of betraying Rick anyway, it just seems a little bit weird and a bit strange. And with it being the penultimate volume as well, I feel a little bit let down by the fact that not really anything happened in it. We do still have, like, Pamela, she's on like this little tour of Alexandria and Hilltop and places like that, and she sees the places. She asks questions about, you know, Rick's people and the way he rules and stuff like that. So yeah, we do get more insight into all of that, and you can actually see Pamela start to take some of that feedback on board, but it's still not perfect. After all, we do still have that confrontation at the end where it seems like she's being very forceful, even though Rick does end up killing Dwight, which, again, I can't really quite believe he does that. Even if it's to prove a point, it's like he's just taken that man's life, you know, after Dwight's been through so much with him, and it's so strange. I don't know what I'm thinking about this. I don't know if one supersized volume is going to be enough to cover what's going to happen next. I just don't understand. I don't know. So I'm actually quite worried about going into this last volume, because I just feel like it's not going to live up to it, you know, after having such a fantastic run of issues and volumes, and I've been loving my time reading this. I just don't want to be let down with a bum note, you know, a bum note of a finale, kind of delaying the inevitable here by rambling. So I'm probably going to give this volume a 4 out of 10, actually. It's my lowest rating. Wouldn't have said I loved reading it. I didn't. Kind of bored me a little bit at times, and one thing I can say about the previous volumes of The Walking Dead, even the ones that I rated a 5, which was the lowest rating I had given a volume at that time, while things were slower, it was never boring. I've never described The Walking Dead as boring. I found this volume rather boring. A good ending because, you know, I wasn't expecting Dwight to get killed by Rick, but at the same time, it's just, I don't know. I don't know what to think. I really don't know what to think. We have like other little storylines as well. Sophia and Carl talking about sex. Again, I don't want to think about that. But Sophia is desperate to find somebody. Yeah, she's like, there's nobody here who I would want to have sex with. And Carl's like, well, what about this person? What about that person? So it's a little bit odd. I mean, it's not odd because they're teens and it's obviously what they're going to talk about. It's just odd to read. I don't really know what else to talk about with this volume, honestly. It was a uneventful, for the most part, volume. Is this a great way to go into the finale? We're about to find out. I haven't finished yet, but Rick's just died. And then I get to this panel, or this page spread. Oh. I'm heartbroken. And fucking Sebastian, that fucking brat, is the one who ends Rick Grimes' life. I'm so pissed off. He didn't deserve the way he went. Oh, and then Carl walking in to find his dad a walker. I still need to finish the volume. I haven't got much to go, but fuck this. I've just finished. Fucking hell. This reduced me to tears. I hate what they did to Rick. I'm just going to put it out there. I hate what they did to Rick. I hated it. I hate that he died the way he did. But what he stood for, what he represented, this entire journey, this entire story that we've just read it together. Yeah, he represents so much, and he went through so much. He changed so many lives. He touched so many lives along the way. Yeah. It's so hard to talk. Like, I'm going to tell you right now, I did not enjoy this volume that much. I don't think I'm going to give it a high rating. I'll probably give it a 5. Right smack bang in the middle. It's a 5. It was more interesting than the previous volume, for sure. But the ending with Cole... God damn it. With Cole talking to his daughter and telling the story of Rick Grimes and what he's done and what he's accomplished. That was beautiful. I loved that. But I wasn't a big fan of everything else. We had pretty much a conflict in the Commonwealth. People were revolting, and Rick Grimes was there trying to help stop it. And Pamela, the governor of the Commonwealth, she tells them to attack, but nobody does. Nobody does anything. Rick is able to stand up to her. And yeah, Sebastian gets riled up. He goes into Rick's bedroom at night. They have a very brief talk, and then Sebastian shoots him dead. I hate that. I hate it so much. Sebastian shouldn't have been the one to have taken Rick's life. I will stand by that. I'd like to know why that happened. I'd like to know why Sebastian was the one who had to do that. I hated that. It was so emotional. But right after that, Carl is going back. He's taking Rick's body back so that he can bury him next to Andrea. God damn it. These characters, man. They hit me so hard. We end up flashing forward probably about 10 years. I don't know how long. It didn't really specify how long the time jump was, but Carly's older and he's actually living with Sophia and they have a daughter called Andrea. So he's not with Lydia anymore. We do see Lydia. They're getting materials and stuff to Eugene for like this railway thing. Like, civilization is thriving. Everything is kind of pretty much back to the way it was beforehand, with improvements, of course. And like, a lot of people are thankful to Rick. There are people who aren't, like Laura, who was Dwight's girlfriend. She hates Rick. Also, Glenn and Maggie's son, Herschel, he has got this zombie show that he puts on. One of them gets loose and Carl kills it, and that's a bad thing. Well, a bad thing to him. Carl is reprimanded for it, and then Carl kills the entire walkers in Herschel show, and he has to go to the Commonwealth to get judged by Judge Hawthorne, who is Michonne. Michonne just ends up abolishing, using walkers as entertainment, and Herschel has a kind of a heart-to-heart with Carl about how nobody remembers his dad, and nobody remembers the walkers or anything like that, and his show was kind of to remind people of that. I don't know the ins and outs of it because it was kind of rushed a little bit. But I could kind of see where Herschel was coming from. There aren't statues of Glenn. There aren't people idolising him like they do with Rick, which is fair enough. You do see Maggie, she's older now, she's Madam President, so I'm really happy for her. Even if she does let Herschel get away with murder, essentially. But the main thing about it was just say goodbye to these characters. Oh, God. I hate crying on camera. I hate it. But, like, damn it, I finished The Walking Dead. Just overall, I just wasn't the biggest fan of how, honestly, Rick shouldn't have died. Like, I would have loved it if that had been Rick talking to his granddaughter, I get it at the same time, like, it's like the idea of Rick and him becoming a legend and people, like, looking up to him even after death. It's like, I get it, I totally get that. I just hated the way he died. You know what, I probably would have been more effective if Rick didn't die the way he did, and we still had like that time jump, and then we find out through the way that people talk about Rick, through the statue of Rick, that he died maybe during that time jump. And I would have preferred not to have seen him die than watch that brat do it. I hated that, I really did. I can't overlook the fact that that's what happened to Rick. I really, after everything he's been through, that's the way Rick's story ended. I mean, his story doesn't end. I guess that's the point, because everyone still talks about him and is still thankful for him. Everything that happens now, the people who are alive now, is thanks to Rick, So, like, I get it, I get it, I just... I need to sit with this for a bit, I think. Still only going to give the last volume 5. It still had those beautiful moments, honestly, and just saying goodbye to these characters is so hard. That was the end. It also was interesting to see Sophia and Carl be together. Like, I kind of was always rooting for them because I found them so sweet during the prison arc. So I'm kind of glad. I wonder what happened between them, like with Lydia and stuff. I have questions, but, you know, we didn't need all the answers. I don't think we needed all the answers. In a way, I liked it ending the way it did. Carl talking to his daughter and having that father-daughter relationship continue on. You know, we had Rick and his son. God damn it. We had Rick and his son. And now Carl with his daughter. It's like a beautiful life moment. It's like so many themes and lessons that we get from this. I'm going to shut up about this volume now. I didn't love it. I really didn't love it. I loved some of it, but like, I'm just so conflicted. I really am. Anyway, I finished The Walking Dead. That was all of the volumes read, and I can't remember my ratings for every single volume, so I will probably put them on the screen now. I did change some of my ratings on some of them, so I will have them up on the screen so you can see my final thoughts and ratings of them. In general, I loved this series more than I thought I would. I thought I would probably start loving it because I do love the TV show and I've always wanted to read the source material. I've had this on my TBR for 12 years now. It was really nice to be able to read it. It surprised me. I didn't realise how attached I would get, and I always knew I would love the story. I just wasn't sure I would connect to the comic form medium as much, but I genuinely did. I thought it was amazing. So many great characters, moments. It tore my heart out a lot. It really did stamp on my emotions a lot. Oh my god. And I genuinely feel like the last half, maybe, or even the last quarter of the series, my emotions were just too invested at that point that I didn't really want to say goodbye. But we're saying goodbye, and that's sad. That's sad. I'm proud of myself for doing it all, though. Doing it all in a few days, really. I just didn't want to stop reading. But it was fantastic. It was a great ride. And yeah, that's it. That's it. It's done. Now I want to try and get back into the TV show, finish that series. I really want to get back into it. I want to see how it ends. I hate endings. I hate things ending. Necessary, but I hate things ending. I really do. Just like this vlog. This vlog has to end. So it's probably way too long anyway. I will do a proper ranking of the volumes at some point. I'll probably do it in a separate video, so make sure you do stick around to see that. And if you're interested in that, then it will be on my channel at some point, so hit that subscribe button to see that in the future. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to leave this video a like if you enjoyed it, and subscribe if you haven't already. Leave all the comments down below. Let me know all your thoughts on The Walking Dead. Did you enjoy the vlog? Just chat to me about anything and everything. I'm a bit emotional right now, but I am desperate to get your opinions on the volumes, on the characters, on everything, the moments. Oh, please let me know everything down below. I want to give a huge thank you to my patrons for supporting my content and making stuff like this possible. If you'd like to join my Patreon or follow me on any social media, then all the links are down in the description box. But thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I hope I will see you in the next video. Bye.